She gave birth to a bright and intelligent daughter, but she was diagnosed with a rare disease, cursed by her father who is a millionaire doctor, but she got healed against all odds. Josephine sat hunched forward, forehead nearly touching her daughter's limp hand. Her thumb moved in circles against Sena's pale wrist, whispering prayers she no longer knew how to say. The little girl's face was a shade lighter than the pillow beneath it. Her curls, once bouncy and wild like spring, were now damp and pressed against her temples. And 4 dripped silently. A monitor blinked. Somewhere, a machine hissed in regular intervals. Welcome, dreamers of love and seekers of twilight magic. If your heart beats for timeless romance, soul-stirring stories, and the glow of enchanting nights, you've just found your sanctuary. Subscribe now, tap the bell, and join our growing family. Because every twilight holds a story, and together, we'll live them all. Then, the door creaked open. Josephine didn't turn. She didn't need to. Her entire body stiffened like her bones recognized what her ears hadn't caught. Her breath halted, suspended between the now and a memory she'd fought to bury. Cedarwood, cypress, sterile linen. Him. Her heart squeezed violently in her chest as she whispered, "Newell." Josephine came the response. Quiet. Waited. Male. When she turned, she almost collapsed. He stood at the threshold of the room, still and devastating. The air shifted. His presence was no longer something she could escape through closed doors or lost phone numbers. It had found her. He wasn't just the man she remembered. He was more, taller than memory dared recall. Skin a warm olive shade, dusted with a tiredness that hinted at sleepless years. His dark curls were shorter now, pushed back with absent-minded fingers. His eyes, those stormy, unreadable eyes, met hers without blinking. And then he looked at the bed. At the little girl. At the 4th. At the face that mirrored his own. He took 2 slow steps forward. "She looks..." His voice cracked. "She looks like me." Josephine's hands curled into fists at her side, but her knees buckled. She caught the edge of the bed to stay upright. Her voice was raw when it came. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to come," he said. "I didn't know." Her lip trembled. "And if you had, I would have come sooner." "You were gone," she whispered. "You didn't just leave me, Newell. You left her." A pause. "I didn't know I was leaving her," he said. "I only knew I'd lost you." She laughed, short and hollow. "You didn't lose me. Your father threw me out like last season's deal, and you let him." "I didn't let him." He stepped closer. "I was blindsided. I left the boardroom that night to propose. I came to your apartment, ring in hand, and you were already gone. I had no choice." Her voice rose. "There were reporters at my door. Your father threatened me. He said if I stayed, he'd destroy you. He said I was a scandal. Because of the clinic case? The photos?" he asked. She nodded. "I didn't care about that." "Well, I did." Her shoulders sagged. "I was pregnant, Newell. I didn't want her to be a weapon in your family's empire or a headline in tomorrow's news." He turned his face to Sena's again. "She's mine." From the first breath, silence, so sharp it sliced through the walls of anger and history. He took another step. Closer to the bed now. "She's sick?" Josephine nodded. "Bone marrow failure. Genetic. They're still diagnosing, but she's getting weaker. And you called me. Why now?" "Because all the donors failed. Because she needed a genetic match. Because I hated you, but not more than I love her." Newell's chest rose and fell rapidly. Then he did something she didn't expect. He reached down and gently touched Sena's arm. She didn't stir. He bent closer, whispering words into the stillness. "Hi, little fighter. I'm sorry I wasn't here, but I'm here now, and I'm going to help." Then he straightened and turned to Josephine. "Let me save her. You think you can just walk in and..." "I'm not a CEO right now," he cut in. "Not a name, not a brand. I'm just a father." Her eyes welled. "It might be too late. Then we fight harder." She looked at him for what felt like the first time in years. No suit, no press behind him, no boardroom glare. Just a man whose eyes were full of regret and resolve. The nurse stepped in then, holding a tray. "Are you the donor match?" Newell didn't blink. "Yes. We'll need blood samples within the hour." He nodded. "Take everything you need." The nurse paused. "Sir, this procedure. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've performed this exact transfusion more times than I can count. Hook me up Josephine opened her mouth but stopped, because in that moment, he wasn't posturing. He was present. The nurse left. Newell looked back at her. When this is done, I want to know everything. Josephine exhaled shakily. If she survives, I'll tell you everything. She will, he said, because we're going to give her every reason to. Then he sat in the chair next to the bed, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face. And for the first time in 8 years, Josephine let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, love hadn't left. It had just gone quiet. The hallway outside the transfusion unit smelled of alcohol wipes and lemon cleaner. Josephine paced in silence, hands clenched at her sides, nerves crawling just beneath her skin. Inside the unit, a nurse worked methodically. Tubes connected Newell's arm to Sena's. Father and daughter, linked for the first time by more than a last name. From the window, she watched Newell recline in the donor bed, his head turned slightly toward Sena's. He wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, just watching, breathing slowly, as if trying to memorize her face. He hadn't touched his phone once. Josephine swallowed hard. The sight shouldn't have moved her. Not after 8 years. But it did. The nurse stepped out. He asked for you. Her brows lifted. He's finished? Still in progress. He just wants to talk. If you're up for it. She hesitated, then walked in. The room was quiet, only the soft click of machines and the low hum of medical equipment. Newell turned his head as she entered. You look tired, he said gently. I am. She stayed standing. You don't have to hover at the edge like a stranger. We are strangers. He nodded slightly. But we weren't always. Josephine folded her arms. You wanted to talk? I do. I need answers, not headlines, not whispers, just truth. She stayed silent. Please, he added. The words softened her. She stepped closer. I want to start with the night you disappeared, he said. You were gone before I could even call. I had the ring in my hand. I know, she murmured. He blinked. So, you knew I was going to propose? I guessed. But it didn't matter. Your father made sure it wouldn't happen. He told me you left to chase money, Newell said. Said you vanished the moment the media turned on you. He told me, Josephine replied, that if I stayed, I'd ruin you. He showed me photos, sent them to my clinic director, to the board of medicine. He made threats in words and silence. Newell frowned. Why didn't you come to me? You think I didn't want to? Her voice sharpened. I waited for you, for weeks, but your entire family vanished. You stopped answering. Your secretary stonewalled me. By the time I got through, the tabloids were calling me everything but human. I had a baby inside me and nowhere to go. I never stopped looking, he said quietly. Then you didn't look hard enough. His jaw tensed. That's not fair. She laughed bitterly. You want fair? She was born in a clinic run by a friend who owed me nothing but kindness. I named her alone. I fed her, changed her, sang her to sleep when she cried for someone she didn't even know she missed. I kept her safe. Not for revenge, not to punish you, but because I didn't want her swallowed by your world. You thought I'd use her? Newell asked. No, she said softly. I thought your father would. He looked away. And I didn't want her thrown away when she stopped being useful. I would never, he whispered. I couldn't take that chance. Newell's hand gripped the edge of the donor bed. So you vanished. I moved to Florence. I used savings from teaching. I painted commissions, sold art at markets. I bought that small villa and raised her there. His eyes lifted. You've been in Italy all these years? She nodded. Every birthday I told her stories about you. I called you the one with the thunder eyes. I didn't lie. I didn't fill her with hate. Newell's throat worked hard. You told her about me? She drew you long before she met you. He shut his eyes. I should have found you. You should have, she replied. Silence again. After a long pause, he spoke. The day my father died, I found a box in his office, letters addressed to me, unsent, messages deleted, reports, photos of you pregnant, ultrasound scans. Josephine's lips parted. You didn't know. Until he died. He nodded. I confronted the lawyer. He admitted your letters were intercepted, that the foundation's PR team paid to bury everything about you. She swayed. All this time, I thought you abandoned me, he finished. Turns out we were both robbed. Her shoulders slumped. And now here we are, connected by a child who never deserved any of it. She's not just our connection, he said. She's our beginning. Josephine didn't respond. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. But I want to try again. I want to know her. I want to be in her life. She's sick, Newell. I know. And I'm here. And if she doesn't make it, then I'll still stay. Her eyes shimmered. You say that now. No, he said, firm. I say it because it's truth. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sena's monitor beeped softly. A nurse came in and checked the lines. Transfusion's going well, the nurse confirmed. We'll monitor overnight. You both should rest. Josephine stepped back as the nurse left. Newell looked at her. I know I've missed a lot, but I won't miss another moment. Josephine studied his face. So many years gone. So much pain held between their ribs like breath neither dared exhale. I don't know what comes next, she whispered. He nodded slowly. But maybe. We let her decide. The transfusion chamber had gone quiet. The machine still blinked, the sterile air still hummed, but something deeper had shifted. Sena's color had improved, just barely. A touch of rose returned to her cheeks, and her breathing no longer sounded like a broken whisper. The IV bag above her pulsed rhythmically, as though echoing the heartbeat of the man beside her. Newell's eyes hadn't moved from her for over an hour. Josephine sat in the corner now, body curled in a chair, arms folded across her chest like armor. But her eyes never closed, not even for a second. The nurse walked in and checked Sena's vitals. She smiled. She's responding well. Josephine exhaled. Thank God. She'll be monitored overnight, the nurse said. Dr. Newell, are you comfortable? I'm not leaving, he answered without looking up. You'll need fluids soon. I've had worse. Heart transplants during civil unrest. Midnight bleeds in air ambulances. I'll manage. Josephine almost smiled. Almost. The nurse glanced between them, then left quietly. Now it was just them again. No interruptions. No curtain between past and present. Newell turned to face her. You've done everything for her. She's my life. He paused, then said, She's mine too. No. Josephine's voice barely rose above the sound of the monitor. She's always been yours. He looked down at Sena. When I left, I thought I'd find peace in my work, but my hands have never stopped shaking since... She blinked. You were always steady in the oar. I still am. But when the surgeries end and the press fades, the quiet comes. He looked up at her again, and in the quiet, she was missing. Josephine swallowed hard. I would have named her after my mother, he said suddenly. But I'm glad you didn't. Why? Because Sena sounds like a sunrise, like someone who paints her feelings. She does, Josephine murmured. She sketches when she can't speak. He nodded. Like you. Josephine rose and approached the bed slowly. She brushed Sena's curls from her face. Her hand trembled. She loves red, she whispered. Says it makes her feel brave. Red was your favorite, Newell said. You wore it the day we met. That red scarf. I still have it. He looked at her, eyes softer now. I never stopped looking for you. Not truly. I wanted to believe that. But you didn't. I couldn't afford to, she admitted. Hope was dangerous. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached out and placed his hand gently over Josephine's, still resting on Sena's arm. She didn't pull away. Let me be her father, he said. Let me earn my place. Josephine's mouth parted, but no words came. I'll stay here, however long it takes. I'll sit beside her every night. I'll help her recover. I'll walk her into her new school when she's ready. I'll paint with her, even if I have no talent. I'll learn what she loves. I'll show up, even if she pushes you away at first. Josephine asked. I'll stay. I'll keep staying. Silence held for a long breath. Then she said, she'll need more transfusions. Maybe more than just that. I'll give anything, he said. Bone marrow, tissue, whatever they ask. They can take everything I have. She might not always be strong. Then I'll be strong for her. Josephine's eyes glistened. She leaned forward and kissed Sena's forehead. I used to whisper your name to her when she was asleep, she confessed. Newell's jaw tensed. She'd ask if you were a prince, Josephine continued. I'd tell her no, he's better, he's real. He's just far away right now. And now I'm here, he said. And I'm not leaving. Josephine sat down on the edge of the donor bed now, right next to him. "She'll have questions," she said, "and she deserves answers. Then I'll give her nothing but truth." She looked at him. "Start with me." He nodded. "I never married," he said. "I dated, poorly. Half my life was a boardroom. The other half was surgeries and silence." She stared at him, unsure. "Do you want to know why I never committed?" he asked. "Because no one felt like this." His hand gestured between them. "Even after all this time, even after everything we lost, this still feels like the only thing that was ever real." Josephine exhaled shakily. "We can't go back." "I don't want to go back," he said. "I want to move forward, with her. And if you'll let me, with you." A long beat. "I don't know how to do this again," she admitted. "Neither do I. But we start here." He looked toward Sena. "And we start with her." Josephine's voice cracked. "She's going to wake up one day and ask you who you are. Then I'll say, I'm the man who came back, the one who should have been here from the beginning, but who's not going anywhere now." She stared at him, long and hard. Her shoulders dropped. Okay. You can stay." Newell reached for her hand. This time, she didn't flinch. "And when she wakes up," Josephine said, "you can tell her everything yourself." They sat that way, quiet, close, united by a child who had taught them what their pride never could. And as the sky outside dimmed into a watercolored dusk, and the machines continued, their soft lullaby, something unspoken passed between them, not forgiveness. Not yet, but the beginning of it. The morning light crept through the wide windows of the transfusion unit, golden and hesitant. It fell across Sena's face, highlighting the soft pink returning to her cheeks. Newell had barely moved all night, his arm still hooked to the transfusion line, his body pale from blood. Loss, but his eyes remained fixed on her, wide open, alert, unwavering. He watched each breath she took like a prayer being answered in real time. Josephine entered carrying 2 coffees. "You look like you lost a fight with time," she said softly, handing him one. He managed a faint smile. "I was afraid if I closed my eyes, she'd stop breathing." "She won't," Josephine said. "She's stronger than either of us ever gave her credit for." Newell took a sip. "She's you and me. That combination was never built to break." The nurse came in then, holding a clipboard and an IV bag. "She's stabilized enough for phase 2, she said. "We'll monitor for rejection signs, but so far, her system's accepting the transfusion." Newell nodded. "What's next?" The nurse looked at him. "Bone marrow aspirate, likely within the week. It's more invasive, requires anesthesia for her, and for you, if you're willing." He didn't hesitate. "Of course." Josephine's hand tightened around her cup. The nurse continued, "She'll need monitoring, a restricted environment for a few weeks, minimal exposure to public spaces." "She's already homeschooled," Josephine said. "We'll make it work." "We?" Newell asked, his brow lifting slightly. Josephine nodded once. "Yes, we." He didn't speak, but something softened behind his eyes. The nurse stepped aside as Sena stirred lightly. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Newell leaned closer, whispering, "Rest, little fighter. We've got you." Josephine turned toward him. "You still speak to her like she can hear every word." "She can," he said. "Even in the OR, unconscious patients respond to rhythm, voice, tone." Josephine pulled a chair closer. "Tell me something. Why didn't you ever tell anyone about me, about us?" He stared at Sena. "Because once you left, I didn't want the world to chew you up and spit you out again." "You could have cleared my name. I didn't care about the gossip," he said. "But if I had stepped forward, I would have exposed you to more. You were gone. I thought you wanted to stay that way." "I did," she admitted, "but not forever. I waited. Longer than I'll ever admit." Josephine looked down. "I thought you'd move on." "I tried. I dated a lawyer once. Brilliant, accomplished, emotionally stable. What happened?" "She wasn't you." Josephine's heart thudded. She masked it with a sip of coffee. "She said I was still in love with someone I'd never talk about," he added. Josephine smiled faintly. "She wasn't wrong." "No," he said. "She wasn't." They both turned as Sena shifted again, her fingers twitching under the blanket. Newell moved instinctively, brushing her knuckles. "Hey, sweetheart, take your time." "She sleeps light," Josephine said. "Has since she was 3. Nightmares?" "Sometimes." but mostly just questions. Newell's voice softened. What kind of questions? Josephine looked at him. Why she doesn't look like any of the other kids. Why her hair is darker. Why her nose isn't mine. Newell swallowed. What did you tell her? That she came from fire and thunder. That her father was the kind of man who walked through storms but never left a trail. He blinked slowly. I don't deserve that. She deserved to believe in you. They sat in silence for a beat. Machines beeped softly behind them. Does she know how sick she is? Newell asked. Yes, Josephine replied. But she doesn't think about it like we do. She thinks in color, says her tired days feel gray, her dizzy days, yellow. Newell smiled. That's not medical. That's art. That's Sena, Josephine said proudly. She makes sense of pain through painting. I'd like to see her work. I kept every piece. He turned toward her. Every one? Even the bad ones. Especially the bad ones, he added with a smile. She laughed gently. You always said flaws made things more beautiful. They do, he said. Just like scars. Her gaze dropped to his hands. You still wear gloves? Only in the or. I remember your first operation without them. He chuckled. That boy survived. Barely. You were terrified. Until you walked in wearing that stupid ID badge upside down. You said I distracted you. He leaned back. You were distracting. Always were. They fell into silence again, but this time it didn't ache. It lingered like something familiar. Safe. Josephine stood up and walked over to Sena's bedside. She'll need stability, not just procedures and clinic visits. A father who doesn't vanish after the blood work clears. Newell looked at her seriously. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow. And every day after. She stared at him. And if I don't take you back, then I'll still show up. For her. Josephine's eyes narrowed. You're not doing this to win me back? No, he said, steady. I'm doing it because she's ours. Josephine looked back at her daughter. She's the best thing I've ever made. She's the only thing I've ever made that matters. Their eyes met. A few feet away, Sena's fingers curled, slowly, softly, around the edge of her blanket. Josephine gasped. Did you see that? Newell leaned closer. She moved. Josephine pressed the call button. She's waking. Newell stood, 4 still in place. Come on, sweetheart. Let those eyes open. A soft murmur escaped Sena's lips. Her lashes flickered. Then, a whisper, barely audible. Mom? Josephine's heart jumped to her throat. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Sena turned her head weakly toward the sound. And then, her eyes found Newell. She stared. He stared back. Neither spoke. Until, who's that? She whispered, voice dry. Josephine looked at Newell, then back at her daughter. That's Newell, she said softly. He's... Sena blinked, then smiled faintly. I know. You do? Newell asked, stunned. She nodded slowly. You have my eyes. Newell couldn't breathe. Not from exhaustion. Not from the hours he'd spent with a tube pulling blood from his veins into a child he never knew existed. But because she had looked at him and recognized him. No introduction. No hints. Just 3 words that shattered every defense he'd ever built. You have my eyes. She said it with the calm of a child who knew something long before the world dared confirm it. Newell swallowed hard. His throat tightened. Josephine leaned forward, tears balanced along her lashes. Sena, do you know who he is? The little girl blinked slowly. Her voice cracked with dryness. Kenny's my dad. Newell dropped to his knees beside her bed, every fiber in his body trembling. How did you know? I just did, she said, small shoulders lifting in the faintest shrug. You feel familiar. Josephine reached for the bedside water and brought the straw to Sena's lips. She took a few sips, then sighed like the simple act of drinking was enough to anchor her to the world again. Newell gently took her hand. I've missed everything. But I'm here now. If you'll let me be. Sena tilted her head. Do you like paintings? Newell blinked at the unexpected question. Yes, very much. She nodded. Good. I painted you once. His breath caught. Before you met me. What did it look like? A tall man with sad eyes, holding a broken heart. The colors were messy, red and gray mixed together. He swallowed. Why sad eyes? Because I didn't know if you were happy without us. Josephine gasped quietly. Newell's grip on her hand tightened. I wasn't happy. I didn't even know I was missing you, but my soul did. Sena smiled faintly. That makes sense. I always thought your soul remembered us, even if your head didn't. He looked up at Josephine, speechless. She's always been this way, Josephine whispered. Too deep, too observant. Newell turned back to Sena. Do you want me here? She blinked. Are you going to leave again? No, never. Even if I get sick again? I'll stay through all of it. She looked at her mother, who nodded gently. Then Sena said, Okay, you can stay. Newell lowered his forehead to the edge of her bed and let out a breath he'd held for nearly a decade. Can I ask something else? Sena said. Anything, he replied. Are you the reason I got sick? The question sliced through the air like a scalpel. Josephine froze. Newell pulled back and looked her straight in the eye. No, sweetheart, you're not sick because of me. Sometimes our bodies have tiny surprises inside, things we can't see until they wake up. But it came from you, she said quietly. Newell didn't lie. Yes, he said. Something in my genes made your body vulnerable. But that's not the same as it being my fault. Will I get better? He looked at her, serious, steady. We're going to do everything we can, and I'll be right here through all of it. Promise? I swear it. Josephine sat back down. Her fingers trembled as she brushed Sena's arm. You're so brave, baby. Sena shrugged again. I've got good blood now. I can feel it. Newell chuckled through the tears in his voice. The best blood. From your stubborn parents. Sena yawned and closed her eyes again. Her voice was fading. Can you stay until I wake up again? I'll never leave your side. Okay, she mumbled. Then I'll sleep again. Her breath evened. Her small chest rose and fell. And just like that, she drifted back into healing rest. Back in the corridor, Josephine and Newell sat in silence on a bench overlooking the rolling hills outside the clinic. She's too wise for her age, Josephine finally said. She sees the world in layers. She sees right through people. She sees me, Newell said, and she didn't flinch. Josephine turned toward him. I was terrified she'd reject you. I expected her to. She didn't. No, he whispered. She just accepted me. The silence returned, but it was gentler now, less sharp. Newell ran his thumb along the edge of the bench. There's something I never told you. Josephine tilted her head. The night before you left, I'd written a letter. A letter? He nodded. Telling you I was walking away from my father's inheritance. I was going to sell my shares, step down from the hospital board, and start over with you. Her eyes widened. Why didn't you give it to me? You were gone before I could. She blinked back tears. You were really going to do that? I was tired of serving a family that didn't serve me back. Josephine looked away. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd sent it. They sat for a moment before Newell continued. I haven't touched any of that inheritance since he died. Why? Because I didn't want his legacy to buy my redemption. Josephine studied his face. And what now? Now I want to build something that isn't tied to guilt, something she can be proud of. Josephine nodded slowly. I'd like that. She asked if I was the reason she was sick. I know, Josephine said, her voice tightening. I heard. Newell's voice lowered, and I didn't lie to her. I know. That's why it mattered. He turned to her. I never lied to you either. She looked back at him. No. But you didn't fight for me either. I'm here now. I see that. A pause. You still paint? He asked. Not much, she replied. Most of my creativity went into keeping her alive. I'd like to see your work. She smiled faintly. It's stored in the attic. Then we have a reason to climb into dusty places. Josephine looked at him. Really looked at him. You're different, she said. So are you. They sat in the waning sunlight, side by side, saying nothing else, because some things didn't need to be spoken anymore. Later that evening, the air outside the clinic turned cooler. A soft breeze danced through the cypress trees lining the hill, and golden light pooled on the stone path as Josephine walked alongside Newell in silence. They didn't speak, not because there wasn't anything to say, but because silence had finally stopped being a threat. It had turned into something else, recognition perhaps, or maybe peace. Senna was stable. Her vitals were holding. The transfusion was a success. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. I'd forgotten how quiet Florence could be at night, Newell finally said. Josephine nodded. The hills swallow the noise. You hear your own breath here. And your regrets, he added. They reached a low wall that overlooked the olive groves stretching into the distance. Beyond them, the rooftops of villas shimmered under the fading sun. Newell leaned forward, elbows on the stone ledge. You built a life here. Without me. I built safety, Josephine said. There's a difference. He turned to her. You didn't fall in love again? She shook her head. No one else got past the front door. Because of me? Because of her, she said simply. I didn't trust anyone to love her more than their own needs. And now, I still don't know if I trust you, she said honestly. He accepted that without flinching. Fair, but I want to. That caught him. You do? Josephine looked up at him. You didn't have to come back, and you didn't have to stay. I didn't know how not to, he replied. The second I saw her name in that message, everything stopped. Josephine studied his face. You used to be colder. I was trained that way. And now, I'm tired of being cold. She nodded once. Good. They stood side by side, eyes on the horizon. The last light of day fell in strands across the landscape. Newell reached into his coat pocket and pulled something small from a velvet pouch. I kept this, he said. He opened his hand. Inside it lay a ring. Simple, silver, no stones, just a smooth band etched with the date he had planned to propose. Josephine's breath caught. You still have it? I couldn't throw it away, he said, even when I wanted to. She reached out but stopped before touching it. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for your answer now. I'm not even asking at all. Then why show me? Because for years, I thought I was angry at you for leaving. But I wasn't angry. I was lost. Josephine said nothing. He closed his hand around the ring again. It's strange. People always talk about time healing everything. But sometimes, time just hides the pain under new routines. It doesn't take it away. It just buries it. And you think that's what happened to us? I think time put a crack between us. And now, we have a choice. Either we fill it, or we fall through it. Her chest rose slowly. And if I don't want to fill it, then I'll stand on this side of it. Not asking you to cross, just staying close enough for when you're ready. Her eyes shimmered. Behind them, the clinic windows glowed softly. Inside, Senna was asleep in a room full of quiet monitors and soft blankets, her breathing steady now. She's going to ask a lot of questions, Josephine murmured. Let her. She's going to want to know why we didn't make it work the first time. Newell looked out into the hills. We were too young, too proud, too surrounded by people who cared more about headlines than hearts. Josephine tilted her head. And now, he said, we have no one left to blame but ourselves. Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. Newell turned to her. I want to be a good father. I want to sit at her art shows, walk her to school, show up on the hard days, on the bright ones. I want to be the parent who doesn't vanish when the lights go off. Josephine blinked back emotion. She deserves that. She deserves the world, he said. They lingered there, both framed by sunset and memory. Slowly, Josephine reached for the pouch in his hand. She didn't take the ring, but she didn't reject it either. She closed the pouch gently and placed it in his pocket. Not yet, she whispered. He nodded. As they walked back toward the clinic, side by side but not quite touching, Newell said quietly, Thank you. For what? For letting me try. And for the first time since she'd called him back into their lives, Josephine allowed herself a small, unguarded smile. You've got a long way to go, Newell. I know. But tonight, you're walking in the right direction. 3 days later, Senna was stable enough to return home, at least for a few nights. The doctors agreed she would rest better away from the sterile lighting and humming monitors. Josephine had prepared the villa for her arrival. Clean linens, warm soups, and Senna's sketch pad placed carefully at the foot of her bed, just in case she wanted to draw. Newell followed them in a separate car, stopping along the winding roads to answer work messages on his phone. But when he pulled up beside the weathered iron gate, something about the place made him forget every boardroom and hospital wing he'd ever walked through. Josephine's villa stood like a painting, walls the color of old parchment, roof tiled in faded terracotta. Olive trees framed the courtyard. Wind chimes danced above the entry. As he stepped out, the gravel crunched under his shoes. Sena peeked out from the passenger seat window and grinned. "This is where I live." He smiled back. "It's beautiful." "It's peaceful," Josephine corrected. Newell walked around and opened her door. "Need help?" "I'm stronger than I look," Sena replied, swinging her legs out. "You definitely are," he said, offering his hand anyway. She took it. Josephine unlocked the front door and pushed it open. "Welcome." He stepped inside and stopped. It smelled like lemon, lavender, and something he couldn't name. Something warm and old and full of memory. Art lined the walls. Not the kind found in galleries, but sketches in charcoal and oil pastel. Some of them clearly Sena's. Others were unmistakably Josephine's. "You still draw," he said. "Only when I can't sleep," she answered. He ran his fingers along the edge of a canvas leaning against the wall. It showed a figure walking away down a narrow alley, back turned, hands in pockets. The whole piece was done in muted gray, except for a single red scarf on the figure's shoulders. "That one's mine," she said softly. He turned to her. "It's me, isn't it?" She nodded. "Painted it the winter after I gave birth. You were everywhere, even when you were nowhere." Newell turned back to the piece. "I don't deserve this kind of immortality." "It wasn't meant to honor you," she replied. "It was meant to let you go." He looked at her. "Did it work?" "No," she said. "Not even close." Sena tugged at Josephine's sleeve. "Can I lie down now?" "Of course, sweetheart. Your room's ready." Josephine led her down the hall. Newell stayed behind, wandering the living room in silence. He noticed the books, the photos, the simplicity of the furniture. Everything in this house spoke of care, not excess. It was nothing like the life he'd lived. A few minutes later, Josephine returned, barefoot now, her shoulders looser. She looked at him. "She's asleep." Newell nodded. "She trusts this place. She built her childhood here. Every branch in the olive grove is hers. Every crack in the walls, every shadow at sunset, she's memorized them." "She made it a home," he said. "She made me a mother," Josephine replied. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, "Come on, let me show you the rest." He followed her through the back door and onto the stone terrace. From there, the hills dipped into the valley, and the sky poured gold across the horizon. A small table sat between two chairs. A half-finished painting rested on an easel nearby. Newell walked toward it. It showed 3 figures, blurred, unshaped, walking through a field of red poppies. "She started it last month," Josephine said. "Told me it was a story she hadn't lived yet." He traced the sky in the painting. "Is that me?" "I don't know. Maybe." Newell turned to her. "Can I ask something personal?" She raised a brow. "You haven't held back so far. What was the hardest part of doing this alone?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the edge of the terrace and placed her hands on the railing. "Sleeping," she finally said. He blinked. "Sleeping?" That moment between lying down and closing your eyes. That's when everything hits. The quiet, the weight, the fear you'll wake up and your child won't. He said nothing. She continued. "There were nights I lay beside her, counting her breaths, afraid to sleep in case they stopped." "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm not telling you for an apology," she said. "I'm telling you because if we're going to try again, not just as parents, but maybe more, then I need you to understand what it cost." He stepped closer. "I do," he said. "More than I can express." She looked up at him. "Do you want wine?" "Depends. Will it be the same kind we drank that summer?" She smiled. "The one you said tasted like regret. You were the one who picked it. I was 19 and impulsive." He stepped forward. "You were fearless." "No," she said. "I was in love." That stopped him. She walked past him, into the house. A moment later she returned with 2 glasses and a bottle of something deep red. She poured quietly and handed him one. "To what?" he asked. She thought for a moment, then said, "To whatever's next." He raised his glass. "To whatever's next." They drank. The air turned cooler. The sun slid lower. Newell leaned back in his chair and looked at her. "Do you ever regret it? Raising her alone?" He nodded. She shook her head. "Never. The only thing I regret is not fighting harder for us before everything exploded. He looked at her with quiet intensity. Then let's not repeat that mistake. They sat under the fading light until the stars began to show. And for the first time since they'd been ripped apart, it didn't feel like a reunion. It felt like the beginning of something new. The stars shimmered above the Tuscan hills like scattered diamonds. Below them, the villa's terrace glowed with soft light. The bottle of wine between them was nearly empty now, and the air had shifted, not just in temperature but in energy. Josephine sat curled into the chair, her legs tucked beneath her, a thin shawl draped over her shoulders. Her hair was messier now, strands brushing her cheekbones. She looked freer, softer. Newell leaned back, glass resting loosely in his hand. His eyes were on her, but his mind was miles away. "Do you remember Florence?" she asked suddenly. He blinked. "The summer before everything collapsed?" "Yes." He nodded. "Of course I do." She turned toward him. "It rained on your birthday. And we stayed in," he said, voice low. "You dragged the mattress out onto the balcony. You said it was ridiculous." She smiled. "You were barefoot in a white shirt that didn't belong to you. It was yours. You wore it better," he murmured. Josephine's smile faded into something more fragile. "That night felt like a different life." "It was," he said, "but I remember every second." They sat in silence, the memory stretching out between them like a bridge over a deep ravine. Josephine looked up at the sky. "You kissed me like the world was ending." "I thought it might," he said, "and when it didn't, it felt like I'd been cheated." She laughed softly. "I remember how you kept your hand on the small of my back. Even while we slept, I didn't want you to float away. You thought I would? I didn't trust anything to stay, not even you." Josephine looked down. "I didn't mean to leave the way I did." "I know," he said, "but knowing doesn't undo it." The breeze swept through the trees, stirring the chimes above the kitchen window. Josephine reached for her glass and found it empty. "I should go inside," she whispered. "Check on her." "She's fine," he said gently. "You know she is." Josephine hesitated, then looked at him. "You think we're doing the right thing? Letting you back in?" "I don't know what the right thing looks like anymore," Newell admitted. "But I know what it feels like to be sitting here with you, and it doesn't feel wrong." Her lips parted. "And if it's not wrong," he continued, "maybe it's something worth exploring." She stood. He rose with her. For a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped past him and walked into the house. He didn't follow. Not immediately. Instead, he stood on the terrace, breathing in the scent of rosemary and distant rain. Minutes passed. Then, light footsteps returned. Josephine stood in the doorway, a wine glass in one hand. Her shawl was gone. In its place, an oversized white shirt. His shirt, Newell's heart stuttered. She walked forward, slowly, deliberately, no words. He set his glass down. She stopped inches from him. "It's going to rain," she whispered. "Just like that night," he replied. She looked up at him. So, let it." And then, they were no longer separated. Her hands rose to his chest. His fingers threaded into her hair. Their mouths met. The kiss was not hurried, not wild, but it burned. A kind of remembering. His lips moved against hers like he was mapping familiar territory, rediscovering softness and surrender. Her fingers gripped the collar of his shirt as she leaned into him, pressing her body to his without hesitation. He broke the kiss only to trail his mouth down her neck, across the curve of her shoulder, inhaling her like oxygen. "You still smell like sleep and paint," he whispered. "You still taste like something I never forgot," she answered, voice husky. A soft roll of thunder echoed in the distance. She smiled. "I told you it would rain." He looked at her. "Then we should make the most of it." Without another word, she took his hand and led him back inside, through the dim living room, past the hallway, and up the stairs to her bedroom. They didn't need music. The rhythm of their breathing was enough. He lifted her, slowly, reverently, placing her gently on the bed. Her fingers found the buttons of his shirt. His hands found her waist. Clothes slipped to the floor like petals falling from memory. And as the rain began to fall against the windows, soft, steady, unbothered, they came back together in the only language their bodies still spoke fluently: need, longing, love, It was past midnight when the storm reached its peak. Rain tapped the roof with steady fingers, the occasional gust of wind making the shutters creak softly. Inside, everything was still, except them. Josephine lay half beneath him, her skin damp with heat and memory, her breath unsteady. Sheets tangled around their legs. Her hand rested over his heart, and her cheek pressed against his shoulder. Newell was silent, still, holding her like he had been afraid she'd disappear mid-exhale. Her body hummed beneath his touch, muscles soft from surrender, chest rising and falling against his side. Minutes passed before either spoke. "I forgot what this felt like," she murmured. His fingers ran down her spine, slow and deliberate. What did it feel like? Like home, like ache and belonging all at once. He kissed her forehead. "You never left my body," he whispered. "Even when you were gone." She shifted to face him, her legs sliding over his hip, bare and certain. "Why did we wait so long?" she asked. "Because we thought pain meant protection," he replied. "And maybe we were right. For a while, but not anymore." "No," he said, "not anymore." Her eyes dropped to his chest. Her nails had left faint traces across his skin. She traced them with guilt. "I didn't mean to hold on so hard," she whispered. "I wanted you to." He sat up slightly, one arm braced beside her head, the other stroking her thigh. His voice dropped. "You think I haven't imagined this? 1,000 nights, 100 waking dreams, you, back in my arms, not as a memory, not as a regret." She pulled him down again, kissing him like a woman who didn't want to talk anymore. His mouth opened to hers, tongue meeting tongue, familiar and fevered. His hand slid between her thighs, rediscovering her, mapping the soft curve of a body that had once held his future. She moaned softly into his mouth as his fingers found rhythm, his touch confident but reverent. Her body responded with hunger, her hips lifting toward his palm. He growled low against her neck. "You're soaked. You made me this way. And I'll keep doing it," he said, sliding lower. He kissed her navel, her hip bone, then parted her legs and buried his mouth between them. Josephine gasped, fingers flying to his hair as his tongue flicked and circled with maddening slowness. Her thighs clenched around his head, back arching off the mattress. "Newell." He didn't stop. She cried out as the first wave hit, her body trembling beneath him, but he didn't let up. His name fell from her lips again and again until her voice cracked, until she begged him to stop. Only then did he rise, kissing her with the taste of her still on his mouth. "Your turn," she breathed, flipping him onto his back. He watched her, wide-eyed, breathless, as she climbed atop him, her movements slow, deliberate, every motion a declaration. She kissed her way down his chest, tracing his muscles with her tongue, savoring each reaction. And when she finally took him in her mouth, he cursed, sharp and guttural. She didn't rush, didn't tease. She gave him everything, using her mouth like it was the last thing she'd ever offer. He groaned, hands tangling in her hair. "Josephine, Jesus, I'm gonna..." She stopped, climbed back up, and straddled him. Their eyes locked. And then she sank onto him. They both cried out. He filled her completely. She moved slowly, their rhythm controlled, sensual. His hands gripped her waist, guiding her, grounding her. They moved together like they hadn't missed a day, like the years hadn't stolen anything at all. Her body took him in deep, and his hands traveled every inch of her thighs, her ribs, the swell of her breasts. When her pace quickened, he met her, thrust for thrust, breath for breath. She leaned forward, forehead against his. "Don't close your eyes." "I won't. I want to see you." "Then look," he said, voice shaking. Their final climb was desperate. Her nails dug into his shoulders. His arms wrapped around her back. Their mouths found each other as they came undone, together, shaking, clinging, groaning into each other's skin. And then, silence, the kind that follows something sacred. He held her as she collapsed against his chest, both of them breathless, spent and trembling. The rain had softened now. So had everything else, she whispered against his skin. "We shouldn't have..." He kissed her temple. "But we did. Do you regret it?" "No. Do you still love me?" "Yes." She paused. "Say it again," she whispered. He tipped her chin up, looked into her eyes and said, "I never stopped." The morning after tasted like citrus and silence. Josephine woke first. Her body ached in the most delicious way, every nerve still tingling from the night before. The sheet was tangled at her waist, one bare leg exposed to the soft light pouring through the linen curtains. Beside her, Newell slept deeply, one arm slung across the space between them, fingers just brushing her hip. His breathing was slow and even, chest rising and falling with a calm she hadn't seen on him in years. She studied him. The lines at the corners of his eyes were deeper now, his shoulders broader, but the scar near his collarbone, the one he got when they were still students, was still there, just a shade lighter than the skin around it. She reached out and traced it with a fingertip. He stirred. "Still hurts when it rains," he mumbled without opening his eyes. She smiled. "Liar." He opened one eye, smirked. Maybe a little. They lay there for a moment, wrapped in the warmth of what they didn't need to say. "You were quiet last night," she said eventually. "I was trying not to ruin it," he replied. "Ruin what?" "That feeling. Like maybe time gave us back what it stole." She exhaled. "Do you think it did?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I haven't felt this full in years." Josephine propped herself on one elbow. "What are you thinking right now?" "That if this is a dream, I'll fight like hell to stay asleep." She leaned in and kissed him softly. Not urgent, not hungry, just grateful. He kissed her back, arms pulling her closer. "I meant what I said," he whispered against her lips. "Which part?" "I never stopped loving you." Josephine pressed her forehead to his. "I never stopped either. I just learned how to silence it." Newell rolled onto his back and pulled her into the curve of his arm. She rested her head on his chest, fingers tracing small patterns against his skin. "You know," he said, "there's a scar on my leg no one else ever noticed." "Oh, you gave it to me." Her brow lifted. "That sounds like something I'd remember. Second year. You dropped a metal easel during one of your mood swings and nearly amputated my ankle." Josephine burst into laughter. "That wasn't a mood swing. That was artistic frustration." "Call it what you want," he teased. "I bled for you. You were dramatic even then. But I didn't stop coming to your studio." She went quiet, then said, "I missed that, the way you never flinched, even when I was at my worst." "You were never your worst," he said. "You were just full." She looked up at him. "Full of what?" "Fire, grief, talent, want. You walked into every room like you knew exactly what it meant to feel too much and say too little." Her throat tightened. He turned to face her again, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's why I loved you." "Past tense? I still love you," he said simply. "But I'm not going to beg you to admit you feel the same. You don't have to." "Good," he said, "because I want more than confessions. I want actions." She leaned in and kissed him again. This time, slower. Their bodies pressed together, skin meeting skin in familiar waves. But there was no rush, no frenzy, just softness. He kissed her shoulder, her collarbone, the hollow just beneath her throat. She sighed into him. "This feels dangerous." "Because it's real," he whispered. "Because it's fragile. We won't break," he said. "Not this time." Their lovemaking was slower that morning, more like a ritual than a release. His hands caressed her like he was learning a language. Her body responded in phrases, moans shaped by memory. When she came, it was quiet. Her eyes open. Her body curved into his. He followed, holding her through every shudder, every breath. Afterward, they lay wrapped around each other like ivy. Josephine traced a faint line across his ribcage. "What's this one?" "Car accident. 3 years ago. Wet road. Sharp turn. I didn't know. No one did. I didn't want pity." She looked at him. "You're not invincible, Newell." "No, but I wanted to be, for you." She rested her head against his chest. "I didn't need perfect. I needed present. I know that now." Their eyes met again. "Do you want to stay?" she asked. "Try and stop me." An hour later, they dressed quietly. Josephine pulled on a robe. Newell buttoned a fresh shirt but left the top open, his hair still damp from the quick shower. They moved through the kitchen like they'd done this 100 times. She poured coffee. He sliced fruit. No conversation, just the comfortable rhythm of people who knew each other deeply. As she leaned against the counter, mug in hand, she said, "Do you want to come with me to Sana's appointment this afternoon?" "I was hoping you'd ask. I don't want her to feel like you only showed up for one moment." "I didn't," he said. I'm here for all of them. Josephine nodded. He stepped closer, brushing his thumb along her cheek. This, us, it doesn't have to be defined yet. We don't need a label. I don't need a promise, she replied. I just need truth. You have it, he said. They stood there for a beat longer. Then she smiled, stepped back, and handed him the plate of sliced peaches. Let's go wake her. The afternoon sun had dipped behind the olive trees, casting a warm golden haze across the hills. The villa felt softer somehow, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Sena had fallen asleep in her room after her appointment, cheeks flushed with the kind of glow that only came from security. Her vitals were stable. The doctor had smiled for the first time in weeks. They were winning, slowly but certainly. Josephine stood in the hallway, watching the breeze rustle the curtains in Sena's room. Behind her, she felt his presence long before he spoke. She's doing better, Newell said quietly. She is. She's strong. She had to be. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he stepped closer, so close that the space between them became electric. I meant what I said this morning, he murmured. Josephine turned slightly. You've said a lot of things. I meant all of them. His hand hovered just beside her arm, not touching, but near enough for her skin to respond. She looked at him, her voice steady. What are you asking for? He searched her face. Nothing. Just permission to feel this again. And if I say yes, then I'll take my time. Josephine nodded once, then walked past him, slowly, deliberately. Follow me. He obeyed. They entered the art room, sunlight filtering through skylights, casting. Soft amber streaks across unfinished canvases and open palettes. I come here when I don't want to cry in front of her, she said. Newell closed the door behind them. I understand, he replied. She turned to him. Do you want me? More than breath. Then prove it. He stepped forward, but she stopped him with a raised hand. Not like before, she whispered. This time, slow, no rushing, no reclaiming, just reverence. His eyes darkened with emotion. Then let me worship you. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. He approached her like she was sacred, as if every step toward her mattered. His fingers unfastened her blouse with agonizing care, his eyes never leaving hers. When it fell from her shoulders, she didn't flinch. You're beautiful, he breathed. You always say that. I never said it enough. She reached for the buttons of his shirt, pausing between each one, dragging out the anticipation, like a melody building to its crescendo. When they stood bare in front of each other, he didn't rush to touch her. He simply looked. And in his eyes, no hunger, only awe. He brushed her collarbone with the back of his fingers, tracing down to the hollow of her throat, across her chest, over the swell of her breast. Her breath hitched. Lie down, he whispered. She obeyed. The art room had a long velvet couch pushed near the window. She stretched across it as he knelt beside her, kissing her ankle, then her calf, then the inside of her thigh. Every kiss was slow. Every breath was shared. He hovered above her, eyes locked on hers, then dipped his head to kiss her ribs, one by one. When he finally reached her lips again, they were both trembling. I miss this, she whispered. What? Being seen, not just touched, seen. He cupped her cheek. You were never invisible to me. She guided his hand between her legs, letting him feel how ready she was. He growled softly but didn't hurry. Instead, he slid into her with exquisite patience, inch by inch, until they were fully joined. Her body rose to meet him, breath escaping in broken gasps. He moved slowly, rhythmically, no urgency, just worship. Her fingers laced behind his neck, and their foreheads touched. I can't lose you again, she breathed. You won't. I'm scared. I'll stay until your fear disappears. They rocked together, bodies entwined in soft rhythm. Every movement, every sigh carried a memory healed, a scar kissed, a regret forgiven. When her climax hit, it wasn't explosive. It was full, a wave of surrender that rolled through her slowly, leaving her breathless and shaken. He followed soon after, his release silent, powerful, buried in the space between her, neck and shoulder, hands gripping her like she was the only anchor he'd ever known. When it ended, they didn't move. They didn't speak. They just breathed, together. Long moments passed. Outside, the sky turned a deeper gold. Inside, the art room smelled of warmth, paint, and skin. He lay beside her now, brushing his thumb against her temple. "Have you ever felt like time paused just for you?" he asked. She nodded. "Right now." He pulled a small blanket from the edge of the couch and draped it over them. Josephine turned into his chest. That was the slowest, deepest, most honest moment we've ever had. He kissed her forehead. And it wasn't about making love. No, it was about unbreaking. She closed her eyes. Then we're finally beginning again. By the time the sun disappeared behind the hills, the art room had grown dim. Josephine lay tucked against Newell's side, the velvet blanket draped over their bare bodies, her cheek pressed to his chest. The faint rhythm of his heartbeat anchored her. "You're quiet," he murmured, fingers tracing slow circles along her back. "I'm thinking about whether this will last." Newell's touch paused. Then he sat up slightly, bringing her with him. "Look at me." She raised her eyes. "This isn't a moment," he said. "It's a return." She didn't answer right away. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. "It still feels fragile." "It should," he said. "Anything worth keeping usually does." She leaned back just enough to study his face. "What happens when the world shows up again? When life gets loud?" "I don't leave," he said. "Not again." Her eyes narrowed, not with distrust, but with caution. "Say that again." "I don't leave," he repeated, slower this time. "Not when it's hard, not when it's inconvenient, not when I get scared." Josephine nodded, then slid out from under the blanket and rose, walking across the room. Naked, unashamed, completely at ease. He watched her, both reverent and hungry. She opened a window. The cool air washed in. "I used to stand here," she said, "on the nights I couldn't sleep, and I'd imagine you on the other side of the world, doing the same. I probably was." She turned back toward him. "I hated you sometimes, but not really. I deserved your hatred." "No," she said. "You didn't. You were just gone, and I didn't know why. I needed someone to blame." He nodded slowly. "And now? Now, I don't want to spend another minute blaming the past for a present that's finally healing." She came back to him, knelt beside the couch, and rested her head on his knee. He brushed his fingers through her hair. "Do you believe me now?" "I'm trying." "Then that's enough." They sat like that for a while, her on the floor, him wrapped in the blanket. Both silent, both full of something neither wanted to name just yet. Finally she said, "Sena's going to notice." He smiled. "She already has. She watches everything. She's your daughter. Of course she does." Josephine laughed. "True. She said something to me this morning," Newell added. "What?" She said, "You make Mom smile like her coffee used to." Josephine blinked. "That little sneak. She's wise. She's nosy. She's both," he agreed. Josephine climbed back into the couch with him, curling up, folding into him like she had every right to. "You know what I missed most?" she asked. "Tell me." "This. The quiet between us. The way you hold me like I'm something you want to keep, not something you're just holding for now." He kissed her shoulder. "Because you are." She looked up. "We're going to have to tell her." "We will. Together." "Yes. And we're going to have to decide what this is." He smiled. "Can I give you an answer that doesn't come in boxes or timelines?" She waited. "This is fire," he said. "Not ashes. It didn't die. It just waited for us to stop running." Josephine's lips parted, breath catching. "Say that again." He leaned in. "You and me, we were never finished. We were paused, interrupted. But now, we're burning again, and this time, we don't let it go out." She kissed him then, not soft, not slow, but with the kind of certainty that needed no further proof. When they parted, she whispered, "I want more mornings." "You'll have them. And nights. You'll have those too. And if I break again, I'll be the one who holds the pieces until you're ready." They lay there, cocooned in warmth and trust, as the moon cast long beams across the tiled floor. No titles, no labels, just the fire. And this time, neither of them would let it burn out. The next morning came gently. Sunlight poured into the villa's kitchen like honey, warm and slow, sliding across the stone floor and up the pale cabinets. The breeze from the garden carried hints of rosemary and wild lemon, and in the distance, a bird sang a single note on repeat like it had nothing better to do. Josephine stood barefoot near the stove, her robe tied loosely at the waist, a wooden spoon in her hand as she stirred something fragrant. Her hair was loosely knotted, a few strands falling around her cheeks, and she hadn't bothered with makeup or slippers. She didn't need them. She looked like someone who finally had a reason to exhale. From behind her came the sound of bare feet on tile. Newell, fresh from the shower, damp curls pushed back, shirt halfway buttoned, collar loose. He paused when he saw her. "You look like a painting," he murmured. She rolled her eyes. "I look like someone who hasn't had coffee yet." He walked to the counter, picked up the kettle and started pouring. Then, "Allow me." She watched him move around the kitchen like he belonged there. No hesitation, no awkward pauses. He found the mugs, the sugar, even the small honey jar she always kept in the corner cabinet. "You remembered where I kept everything," she said. He glanced back at her. "I didn't forget anything about you." He handed her the coffee. She accepted it without speaking, bringing the mug to her lips and taking a long sip. He turned the heat down on the stove and peeked into the pot. "Is this the lentil soup you used to make on rainy days?" She raised a brow. "You remember that?" "I remember the way it made the whole house smell like hope." That stopped her. "I'd forgotten that," she said quietly. "What it feels like to wake up and not brace for the worst. You don't have to anymore." She looked up. "You say that with such certainty, because I've already lost everything once. I'm not letting it happen again." Before she could respond, a soft voice echoed from the hallway. "Mom?" Josephine turned. "In the kitchen, sweetheart." Sana shuffled in slowly, wearing mismatched socks and one of her oversized shirts covered in hand-drawn hearts and stars. Newell dropped to his knees. "Hey," he said softly. She smiled. "I smelled food." Josephine reached for a small bowl and ladled out some soup, blowing gently before handing it to her. Sana sat on the cushioned bench near the window. Newell joined her, sitting beside her, careful not to crowd. She took a few bites, then looked up at him. "Did you sleep here?" "I did." "With Mom?" He hesitated. "Yes." Sana nodded. "That's okay." "It is. You make her smile when she thinks no one's watching." Josephine, still standing by the counter, nearly dropped her spoon. Sana sipped her soup, then continued, "I think she forgot how to do that for a while." Newell looked at Josephine. Josephine looked at the floor. "I don't want to mess anything up," he said. "You didn't," Sana replied. He reached for her hand gently. "You sure?" She nodded, then looked at her mother. "Can we all go to the art museum this weekend? The one with the big red installation?" Josephine smiled. "Of course. Even Dad?" The word hung in the room. Newell blinked slowly. "You can call me whatever you're comfortable with." Sana shrugged. "I like Dad. Feels short, but powerful." He laughed. "I'll take that." She returned to her soup. "I also think you and Mom should dance." "Dance?" Josephine asked. "Yeah, like in the movies." "We don't need music for that," Newell said, rising to his feet and offering Josephine his hand. She gave him a look. "You're serious?" "Always." She dried her hands and walked over. He pulled her gently into a slow sway, right there in the kitchen, the scent of soup and sunlight wrapping around them. Sana clapped softly. "See? Movie moment." Josephine rested her head on his shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. "Are we really doing this?" "We're already in it," he said. "And I'm not stepping off the floor." She smiled. "Then don't let go." He didn't. Later that morning, while Sana painted on the patio, Josephine and Newell stood under the olive trees, sipping coffee from the same mug. "I forgot what life could feel like when it wasn't surviving," she said. "I want to give you more days like this." She looked up at him. "We still have a long road. I'm here for all of it." They watched Sana tilt her head and add a streak of blue to her canvas. Josephine whispered, "She's painting us." Newell smiled. "Then let's give her something beautiful to finish." The afternoon sky wore the colors of calm, soft gold, washed blue, hints of ivory cloud drifting like secrets that didn't need to be kept anymore. Josephine stood beneath the pergola at the edge of the garden, watering the herbs in the stone planters. Her fingers moved mechanically, but her mind wandered. Behind her, she heard the familiar creak of the old wood gate. She didn't turn. "You always pause at that spot," she said without looking. Newell chuckled softly. "Because you always look your most peaceful from here." She smiled, placing the watering can down and brushing her palms on her apron. "You've always had a way of watching me when I think no one is." "I never stopped," he said. Even when you weren't there? She finally turned to him. He looked different in daylight. Less like the man she remembered from the glossy articles, and more like the boy who used to sleep on her studio floor just to be near her. You thinking of running again? He asked gently. Josephine tilted her head. You always did know when I was planning an escape. I can feel it, he said. The way you withdraw when something gets too close. I'm not used to feeling safe, she admitted. Even now. Especially now. Newell walked to her slowly. You don't have to trust me completely. Just enough to stay. And if I can't promise that, then let me earn each moment, he said. 1 hour at a time. She looked down at her hands. I've changed, Newell. I'm not who I was. I don't move quickly anymore. I need time to process, to breathe, to check if the ground beneath me is solid. He reached for her fingers. Then I'll wait at every checkpoint. I'll stand still while you test the earth. Her eyes shimmered. You always say the right things. Only because I finally understand what wrong feels like. She exhaled and leaned against the low stone wall, the breeze catching the edge of her robe. Do you want to build something again? She asked. With you? With her? With all of us? He nodded. But only if we build it slow, no shortcuts, no skipping the hard parts. Even the awkward ones? Especially those, he said. They're the ones that teach us how to stay. She smiled, then turned and began walking back toward the house. Come on. He followed. Where to? You wanted permanence. Let's start with a drawer. He stopped. A drawer? In my room, she said over her shoulder. You want to be here? Leave something behind. Clothes, a book, anything. Newell stared after her, stunned. You're serious? She paused in the doorway. Don't run this time. He crossed the garden in 4 strides and followed her inside. Later that evening, Sena was curled up on the couch, flipping through a worn art book, her feet tucked under a blanket and a plate of fruit beside her. Newell sat at the edge of the coffee table, holding an open box of his things. Josephine stood nearby, arms crossed, amused. I can't believe you still have these, she said, pulling out a faded photograph. Newell smirked. I kept every one you gave me. This one's awful, she laughed. You're blinking. I blink when I'm overwhelmed by beauty. She rolled her eyes. You blinked because the flash was too bright. Sena looked up. Can I see? He handed her the photo. She examined it, then held it against the side of his face. You had more hair. Newell groaned. That's unnecessary, but true. He grinned. You're going to be a menace when you hit your teens. I already am. They all laughed. Josephine took the box from his lap and brought it upstairs. When she returned, she handed him a key. He looked at it, confused. To the drawer, she said simply. He turned it over in his palm. It was small, brass, nothing dramatic, but it was everything. He rose and closed the space between them. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Good, she whispered, because I'm tired of packing up my hope. That night, as they prepared for bed, Josephine opened her closet and pulled out a folded shirt. I've been meaning to return this. Newell smiled. I wondered where that went. You left it at my place the last night before we fell apart. She handed it to him. He held it for a moment, then set it gently on the dresser. Let's not call it falling apart, he said. Let's call it breaking open. She looked at him, the weight in her chest lighter now. That sounds less painful. It still was. But at least now, it led us here. She stepped into him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You're different, she murmured. So are you, and somehow, we still fit. He kissed the top of her head. Because some things aren't about who we were, they're about who we've become. They stood in silence, no music, no grand speech, just a woman who finally stopped running, and a man who finally knew how to stay. The moon was high, casting silver across the villa's tiled roof and draping the olive trees in soft shadow. The house had grown quiet. Josephine moved through the hallway on bare feet, carrying a folded blanket and a book Sena had left on the kitchen table. As she reached her daughter's door, she paused. The light was still on. She knocked softly. Sweetheart? No answer. She opened the door a crack. Sena was wide awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed, sketchpad in her lap, colored pencils scattered like confetti across the comforter. Josephine stepped in. It's late. I know, Sena whispered. What are you drawing? Sena turned the sketchpad around. It was a trio of hearts. Not the perfect kind you'd find on a Valentine's card, but organic, hand-shaped, slightly uneven. One heart was large and bold. One was soft and curved. One was smaller, with lines that swirled inside like tiny storms. Josephine sat at the edge of the bed, studying the image. Tell me what it means. Sena pointed. This one's you, she said, tapping the curved heart. You feel warm. Josephine swallowed, then nodded. This one's Dad, she said, pointing to the bold one. His is strong, but sometimes it shakes. And the little one? That's mine. Why the swirl inside? Sena shrugged. Because I feel a lot. All the time. Josephine reached out, brushing a curl behind her daughter's ear. That's not a flaw. I didn't say it was, Sena replied simply. Do you want to come sleep in my room tonight? Josephine asked. Sena looked at her. Is he there? Josephine hesitated. Yes. Then I want to sleep with both of you. Josephine blinked. Really? Sena nodded. I think our hearts beat better when they're close. Minutes later, the three of them lay in bed. Sena curled between them, her head on Josephine's shoulder, her small fingers wrapped around Newell's hand. No one spoke for a while. Just breathing. Just presence. Then, Dad? Sena whispered. Yes? Do you think I'll always be sick? He took a breath. I think you'll always be brave. That's not an answer. No, he said. But it's the truth. Sena rolled slightly, facing him now. Were you scared when you gave me your blood? Yes. Why? Because I didn't know if it would be enough. She nodded. But it was... He squeezed her hand. It still is. Josephine kissed the top of her daughter's head. We'll get through everything. Together. Sena sighed, her voice barely audible. I like the way that sounds. The room settled again, the weight of the day dissolving into the softness of shared space. A few minutes later, her breathing slowed. Her grip loosened. She was asleep. Newell looked over her to Josephine. She's magic. She's us. She's more. They stayed there, unmoving, not wanting to disturb the quiet. Do you remember, Newell said softly, when we talked about what kind of parents we'd be? In Florence, on the roof, you said you'd be the soft one, and you said you'd be the protector. We were both right, he whispered. Josephine turned her head toward him. Do you think this is real? I think this is the realest thing I've ever known. They lay still again, the faint ticking of the old clock in the hall the only sound in the world. 3 bodies, 3 heartbeats, 1 promise without a single word spoken. The next morning, the house woke in soft waves. Birdsong filtered through the windows. The scent of bread, warm and fresh from the bakery down the road, wafted through the villa's hallway. Newell stood in the kitchen, barefoot, hair still damp from the shower. He was slicing fruit, slowly, carefully, as if the act itself mattered more than the outcome. He worked in silence, the rhythm of the knife on the board soothing. From behind him came small footsteps. He turned. Sena stood in the doorway, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a cape, her curls wild from sleep. They looked at each other. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Then, "Good morning," she said. Newell smiled. "Good morning." Sena padded into the room and climbed onto the stool by the counter. "What are you making?" she asked. "Breakfast. Want to help?" She nodded, eyes still half-lidded from sleep. He handed her a banana and pointed to a bowl. "Can you mash this for me?" She took it without question, her small hands steady. They worked side by side. No awkwardness, no forced conversation, just quiet, present. He peeled an orange. She squished the banana into a soft, sweet paste. After a few minutes, she said, "Do you know how to braid?" Newell looked up, surprised. "Hair?" She nodded. "Not really, but I can try." She turned around on the stool and lifted the blanket from her shoulders, revealing the long, thick curls down her back. "Okay," she said. "Try." His hands hesitated over her hair. "You sure?" he asked. She looked over her shoulder. "If it's bad, I'll fix it." He laughed gently. "Fair enough." He took a comb from the counter and started slowly, sectioning her hair with focus. It was uneven, a little lopsided, but she sat perfectly still, eyes closed. Josephine appeared in the doorway minutes later, blinking at the scene. She didn't interrupt, just leaned against the frame, watching. When Newell finished, he tied the loose braid with a ribbon Sena handed him. "There," he said. She reached back and touched it, then grinned. "Not bad." He smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." She looked at him, really looked this time. And then she said it. "Thanks, Dad." The word hit him in the center of his chest. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. His voice caught. "You're welcome." Josephine stepped into the room. "You two make quite the team." Sena hopped off the stool. "Mom, he braided my hair." Josephine's eyebrows lifted. "Impressive." "Next time," Sena added, "he can paint my nails." Newell held up his hands. "That might be above my pay grade." Josephine poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned on the counter. "We'll train you." They sat together at the table, Sena between them, plates of toast and fruit in front of them. Newell poured juice. Josephine spread honey. Sena talked about her dreams. Normal, easy, real. After breakfast, Sena returned to her sketchpad while Josephine and Newell sat outside, mugs in hand, watching the sunlight crawl up the garden wall. "She called me Dad," Newell said softly. "I heard. I didn't ask her to." "I know." He turned to her. It felt like forgiveness. Josephine reached over, laced her fingers through his. "That's because it was." They sat that way for a long time. 3 lives, once scattered, slowly knitting back together. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. The villa's living room had turned into an artist's corner. Sheets of paper covered the coffee table. Markers spilled from jars. Sena sat cross-legged on the floor, tongue poking from the side of her mouth as she colored with deep focus. Josephine sat nearby, sorting laundry, humming softly. Newell walked in, wiping his hands on a towel. "She's been at it for hours," Josephine whispered, nodding toward their daughter. "She always draw this much?" Josephine chuckled. "Only when something's on her mind." Newell crouched beside the girl. "What you working on?" Sena didn't look up. "A story." "Oh? Can I see?" She nodded, flipping through pages. "It's about a girl who lived in a white house with blue windows. But she didn't talk to anyone. She just watched." Newell settled onto the rug beside her. "Watched what?" "People. Birds. The moon." She thought maybe if she watched enough she'd understand why she was there. Josephine stopped folding. Newell tilted his head. "Why wasn't she talking?" "Because nobody listened before," Sena said simply. The words hit the air like a soft blow. "Did someone finally listen?" Newell asked. Sena nodded. "A man came. He didn't say much, but he gave her a flower." "What kind?" "A white tulip." Newell looked at Josephine. She met his eyes. That wasn't just imagination, it was memory. From the corner of the room, Sena handed him one of her pictures. It was a sketch of a man. His back was turned. He stood beneath a stormy sky, holding a flower behind him. Next to him stood a girl, her face tilted upward, expression unreadable. Newell's throat dried. "That's beautiful," he said. Sena looked up at him. "I used to draw him before I met you." He blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "Every time I had a bad day, I drew him standing in the rain. I didn't know who he was, but he always brought the tulip." Josephine's voice was low. She started drawing him after her first hospital stay. Newell's hand tightened on the page. "And now?" he asked. "Do you still draw him?" She pointed to another page. This time the same man sat on a bench, hair damp from rain, but he had a little girl leaning against his shoulder. He was smiling. "So he stayed," Newell whispered. Sena shrugged. "I guess he did." Josephine crossed the room, knelt behind Sena, and hugged her close. "You always knew he'd come," she whispered into her daughter's curls. "I hoped," Sena said, "but I didn't think it would be this nice." Newell set the drawing aside gently. "Can I keep this one?" he asked. Sena nodded. "But only if you draw me a better one later," she added quickly. "This one's kind of messy." Newell smiled. "Deal." They spent the afternoon in the garden. Sena picked dandelions and braided them into a crown. Josephine read aloud under the olive tree. Newell sat with a sketchpad, attempting his own version of a tulip. At some point, Sena looked up. "Will you come to my next hospital appointment?" Newell paused. "Yes," he said, without hesitation. Everyone, if you'll have me. She gave a small smile. Okay. Then she leaned into him, rested her head on his chest, and said the thing he never thought he'd hear so soon. I'm not scared anymore. That night, after Sena had gone to bed, Newell stood on the patio, her drawing in his hand. Josephine joined him, 2 mugs of tea in hand. She's changing, he said. She's healing. He looked at the stars. Are we? Josephine didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, We're remembering how to. He looked at her. Do you think she always knew? That you were her father? Josephine asked. He nodded. She smiled sadly. Children feel what adults try to hide. He ran a thumb over the paper. I was a stranger in her drawings once. And now? She drew me smiling. Josephine looked up at him. That's not just her forgiveness, that's her trust. And just before they went inside, she added, Don't waste it. The rain had softened into a whisper against the windows, casting glimmers of light across the stone floor. In the center of the living room, Sena lay sprawled on a velvet rug, her hair damp from the bath, curls sticking to her forehead. Her coloring book sat beside her, untouched for once. Newell sat nearby on the floor, legs stretched out, one arm propped behind him. Josephine curled on the sofa, knees drawn up, nursing a cup of herbal tea, her eyes never far from them. I don't want to go to sleep yet, Sena declared. Josephine raised a brow. Why not? Sena rolled onto her back, arms spread out. Because this feels like a dream. Newell leaned forward. What kind of dream? The kind I don't want to wake up from. Josephine set her tea down, her throat tightening. What makes it feel like that? Sena sat up, crossed her legs and pointed. You're here, he's here, and nobody's fighting, nobody's leaving, nobody's scared. Newell didn't speak. He just reached out and gently tugged her toward him. She nestled between his legs, back against his chest. Josephine slid off the couch and joined them on the floor. In that moment, there were no hospital rooms, no past decisions, no diagnoses hanging like shadows. Only a child resting in the middle of 2 people rediscovering what it meant to love as one. Sena tilted her head back and whispered, Can I ask something? Anything, Newell said. Do you think I'm made of both of you? Josephine smiled. Of course. You're our best parts. Sena looked between them. What part of you is in me? Newell looked at Josephine. She gave a quiet nod. Well, he began, adjusting so she was cradled more comfortably in his lap. You're curious like me, always asking questions, always observing. But you've got her strength, that quiet, steel-soft kind. Sena giggled. And what else? Josephine leaned in. You love people quickly, that's me, but you forgive slowly and deeply, that's him. Sena rested her cheek against Newell's chest. I think I like being both of you. Josephine blinked fast. Newell's hand found hers. The silence wasn't empty. It was sacred. After a few minutes, Sena sat up again. If I'm both of you, does that mean you two are, like, friends again? Josephine chuckled softly. Friends? Or more than friends? Newell turned to Josephine, one brow raised. Well, are we? Josephine smirked. We're healing. That's a start. Sena looked between them. Do people heal better when they're in love? Newell's voice was low, intimate. The right kind of love? Yes, Josephine nodded. But it takes time and trust. Sena placed both her hands on their joined ones. Then maybe we're doing it right. They stayed that way, hands entwined, heads leaning, until the sound of rain faded and the night fell quieter than ever. Later, after tucking Sena in, Newell stood outside her room, looking at the small drawings she'd taped to her wall. Each was brighter than the last. Not one shadow, not one storm. Just flowers, stars, and 3 smiling faces. He turned. Josephine stood behind him, arms folded, watching. She believes in us, he said. Josephine nodded. She's always believed in love. She just needed to feel safe in it. And you? Newell asked. She stepped closer. I'm not the same woman you once walked away from, Newell. He met her eyes. And I'm not the man who left. Their faces hovered inches apart. Then Josephine smiled, just barely. You're starting to look like the man I used to paint in my prayers. Newell reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And you're becoming the reason I want to stay awake at night. just to remember how your voice sounded in the dark. Josephine exhaled shakily. We've hurt each other. He nodded. And we've healed more than we thought we could. She reached past him, opened Sena's door just a crack. They both looked in. Sena had fallen asleep holding a tulip drawing. Maybe she really is the best part of us, Josephine whispered. No, Newell murmured. She's the start of our second chance. The morning air in Tuscany held a perfume of ripe grapes and sun-warmed stone. For the first time since his arrival, Newell wasn't checking flight schedules. He wasn't taking urgent calls. He wasn't halfway out the door with an apology in his eyes. He was present, fully. Josephine adjusted her daughter's sweater as Sena bounced at the edge of the villa's long patio steps. Are you sure you want to come? Newell bent to tie the laces of Sena's tiny shoes, nodding. I'm not missing another Tuesday. Even if it's a therapy day? Josephine raised a brow. Especially because it is. Sena beamed, wrapping her arms around his neck as he lifted her. Daddy's my bodyguard now. More like your emotional support staff, Newell teased. They drove to the pediatric center in quiet joy. Sena's playlist hummed through the speakers, half lullabies, half dramatic Disney scores. Her little fingers danced in the air with each note. At the clinic, Newell didn't wait in the car. He didn't pace in the hallway like he had the first few times. He sat in the small observation room, separated by a pane of glass, watching, learning, loving her in real time. Dr. Antonia guided Sena through focus exercises, art therapy, voice projection work, breath patterning. Josephine sat beside Newell, notebook in hand, occasionally scribbling. She didn't look at him until the third activity. She's drawing vines, she whispered, pointing to the page Sena was painting. Long, winding green tendrils stretched across the paper, curling around a heart, and two small stick figures, one wearing a tie, one with a flower in her hair. She's binding us together, Newell murmured, making sure we don't fall apart again. Josephine swallowed. She's more intuitive than we are. After the session, Sena ran toward them, proud of her painting. Newell knelt to meet her eyes. Is this us? He asked. She nodded. And that's the future. He held the paper as if it were treasure. Back at the villa, Newell didn't disappear into his phone or emails. He helped prepare lunch, badly. Are you burning the garlic? Josephine teased. Apparently. I've mastered billion-dollar takeovers, but not sautéing onions. Sena laughed from the counter stool, swinging her legs. You should make a cookbook. Call it Daddy's Disasters. Josephine chuckled. It would sell out. Later that evening, Newell found himself in the garden with pruning shears, trimming the old vines with gentle precision. I need to earn my keep, he called out, when he noticed Josephine watching from the balcony. You're already keeping my daughter's heart steady. He turned, surprised by the softness in her voice. And yours? He asked quietly. She hesitated before answering. It's learning how to beat without fear again. Days became rhythm. Morning smoothies Sena hated but drank because Newell made them. School pickups and bedtime stories with improvised endings. Appointment days where Newell held Josephine's hand in the waiting room and whispered affirmations she hadn't realized she needed to hear. He didn't ask to stay. He just never left. And Josephine didn't send him away. One night, after Sena was asleep, they sat under the grape arbor, wine glasses untouched between them. You're doing something dangerous, Josephine whispered. Like pruning too much? He smirked. Like making this feel safe. Newell leaned in, resting his arm along the back of her chair. I used to think love was a private thing. Something I could hide in gestures and avoid in words. And now? Now I know love doesn't mean anything unless it's loud, seen, shared. Josephine turned her face toward him. So speak it. I love you, Newell said simply. Not with hesitation, not as a promise, but as a truth. She didn't answer right away, but her fingers found his, and that silence, in the moonlight under the vines, said everything. The night in Tuscany had a kind of hush that made the stars seem louder. The moon slipped past slow-moving clouds, casting silver light over the garden, where olive branches whispered ancient secrets with every soft breeze. Josephine stood beneath the oldest tree, barefoot, shawl over her shoulders, wine untouched on the garden table behind her. She heard him before she saw him. Soft footfalls, familiar now, reverent. Newell approached quietly, jacket draped over his forearm. His eyes didn't search, he knew where to find her. You always disappear to the same place, he murmured. She didn't answer at first. Her eyes were fixed on the olive tree above. "It's the only thing here older than my grief," she said softly. He came closer, but didn't touch her yet. "You're not grieving alone anymore," he said. Josephine turned to face him. Her face was luminous in the moonlight, bare, vulnerable, and open in a way she hadn't been in years. She reached for his hand first, and he didn't hesitate. Their lips met like breath, no urgency, just presence. It wasn't a kiss to claim. It was a kiss to stay. He pressed his forehead to hers. "Tell me what you need. To be seen." "All of me," she whispered. "Even the parts I tried to bury." His hands cupped her cheeks. "I see you, Josephine." They moved together slowly, like old songs remembered. There was no bed, no room, no candles. Just grass beneath their feet, bark behind her back, stars overhead, and a night sky that didn't blink. He slid the shawl from her shoulders, pausing at every exposed inch of her skin as though memorizing not just the shape, but the pain beneath it. His mouth brushed her collarbone, her shoulder, her trembling neck. She gasped, not from heat, but release. Tears welled before pleasure could overtake. He didn't rush her, didn't demand anything, just knelt, body pressed to hers, hands exploring slowly, reverently. Josephine wrapped her arms around his back, fingers curling at the base of his spine as his lips traced the space just above her heart. He kissed her there longer than necessary, like anchoring a blessing. Their bodies found rhythm not from urgency but from understanding. Slow, intentional, deep. With every movement he told her, "I'm here. I know what you've lost. I'm not afraid of your wounds." She arched toward him, whispering his name, not as a call, but a prayer. He held her closer, kissing the tears from her cheeks even as her breath stuttered. And when the final wave passed through her body, she didn't moan. She wept. Silent. Full. Freeing. He didn't let go. Didn't ask why. He simply gathered her into his arms and sank down with her onto the soft grass, pulling her into his chest. His heartbeat became her lullaby. His silence became her sanctuary. Later, with her head on his chest, Josephine traced small circles on his skin. "I've never been held like this," she said, voice thick. Newell didn't speak. He only kissed the crown of her head. She turned slightly, facing him. "You didn't try to fix me. You just stayed." "You're not broken," he whispered. Her eyes shimmered in the darkness. "I was. And now, I think I'm learning how to be whole beside you." Newell exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That's all I want." She kissed his jaw, soft, grateful. "Don't disappear again," she said, barely audible. "I won't," he vowed. They lay there for hours beneath that tree, skin to skin, soul to soul, not speaking, not sleeping, just being. And above them, the olive tree stood still, bearing witness to a love finally spoken out loud. The sun broke gently over the hills, casting a rose-gold hue across the villa's terracotta walls. Inside, Josephine lay awake, her body tucked into the warm arch of Newell's chest, his arm protectively wrapped around her waist. She could feel his breath on the back of her neck, even and steady. But it wasn't the warmth that woke her. It was peace. For the first time in years, she didn't wake up gripped by panic. There were no lingering shadows, just stillness and safety. She turned slowly to face him. Newell was already awake, watching her. There was no sleep in his eyes, only reverence. "Good morning," she whispered. His thumb brushed along her jaw. "It is. Because you're here." She bit her lip, her eyes searching his face for hesitation. She didn't find any, only truth. They remained like that for a while, speaking in silence, letting the weight of the night fill the space between words. Finally, he broke it. "I don't want to pretend anymore." Josephine blinked. "About what?" He sat up slightly, his hands sliding down her back. "About us." Her breath caught. Newell's voice dropped lower, firmer. "I loved you long before that hospital in Florence, long before Siena, long before I knew I was allowed to." She sat up now, heart racing, knees tucked under the sheet. He turned to her, fully facing her. "I didn't just fall for you in a moment. I kept falling for you. Every time you laughed in my presence. Every time you stood your ground in front of arrogant physicians. Every time you walked past me and didn't notice how long I stared." Her lips parted, but he continued. "I watched you love people who didn't know how to love you back. I watched you pour out your spirit, and every time, I told myself to stay away, that I wasn't allowed to want someone so good, so complete. Newell, he reached out, took both her hands in his. I thought I could shut it off, that after Italy I could walk away. But then I saw her, I saw our daughter, and I realized I never walked away at all. Josephine trembled, eyes welling with tears again. This time, not from pain. Say it, she whispered. I love you, he said without a blink. I always have. She exhaled, sharp, trembling, relieved. Then she laughed, not out of mockery but wonder. I thought I made it all up, she said. Those glances, that tension in the hallway, the way your fingers hovered near mine when we walked side by side. You didn't imagine any of it. Her shoulders sagged under the weight of long-buried hope. I was in love with you then too, she said. But I thought you were just another man who needed saving, not someone who'd stand with me once I fell. He frowned. You didn't fall, Josephine. You rose from ashes people tried to bury you in. Her lips quivered. I don't know how to be with someone like you, she said softly. Someone who sees me clearly, who doesn't flinch when I'm honest, who stays when I break. You don't have to know how, he said. We can figure it out. Together. Later that day, they walked hand in hand through the vineyard. Sienna ran ahead of them, her giggles echoing between rows of green. Josephine turned to him. What if I mess this up? She asked, a voice barely above the breeze. He stopped walking and faced her. Then we'll fix it together. She looked up at him, eyes filled with light and uncertainty. He pulled her close, forehead against hers. You're not alone anymore, he whispered. She closed her eyes. I love you too, she said, letting the words fall freely. Even after everything, even when I tried not to, I loved you, and I never stopped. His arms came around her fully. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Their hearts had already met in the middle. What was once shattered had become sacred, and what they thought was lost had simply been waiting for the right time to return. Florence woke up glowing that morning, not from the sun, but from excitement bubbling beneath the surface of the Curry household. Sena stood in front of her mirror in a white linen dress, her curls freshly defined, her eyes wide with something fierce, nervous pride. Josephine adjusted the tiny pearl earrings she had saved for a special day. You ready? She asked gently. Sena nodded. Kind of. Newell appeared at the door with a camera slung over his shoulder. The car's waiting, he said, smiling. But the world can wait if you need a minute. I don't want the world to wait, Sena said, lifting her chin. I'm ready for it to see me. The Florence Youth Arts Center was buzzing by the time they arrived. Children's works lined the gallery walls, bursts of color, pieces of pain and imagination stitched together with hope. But in the farthest room, the one with the highest windows and softest lighting, was a canvas unlike any other. It was signed, Sena Curry, age 6 title found. Josephine gasped the moment she saw it, not because it was flawless, but because it was truthful. The painting showed 3 figures standing beneath a large tree. The figures had no faces, just colors. The smallest was a burst of yellow and lavender, arms outstretched. The tallest, draped in navy and gold, stood behind her, hand out. And beside him, wrapped in deep crimson, was the final figure, with both hands reaching toward the others. At the base of the tree, in thick strokes of black and gray, were broken shapes, shadows, shards and storm clouds. But above it, in soft strokes of pale blue and silver, birds soared, and in the corner, almost hidden, the word, found. Newell stood frozen. He hadn't realized he was crying until Josephine reached for his hand and found it trembling. I didn't help her paint that, she said softly. I didn't either, he whispered. Then came the applause. The judge, a stoic woman with sharp glasses, stood near the front of the room. Sena Curry's work, she said to the crowd, was unanimously selected as this year's best storytelling canvas. Gasps, then more clapping. A few cheers from other kids. Sena's eyes went wide, and she turned toward her parents, half in disbelief. Josephine was already pushing her gently toward the center. Go on, she whispered, smiling. The microphone was taller than Sena. Someone adjusted it. She cleared her throat once. I painted this after I got my blood taken, she said, because I learned something scary and something beautiful at the same time. The room quieted. Scary because I thought I was sick forever. Beautiful because I wasn't. She turned, gesturing to the painting. My mommy told me once that being lost isn't the end of the story. It's just the part where someone's looking for you. Her voice wavered. And this painting is when I got found, not just by doctors, but by people who loved me even when I didn't feel lovable. Josephine clutched Newell's hand harder. Sena smiled. And now that I'm found, I want to help other people feel found too. Later, under soft gallery lights, she stood between them, one hand in Josephine's, one in Newell's, as people came to ask about the painting. Some took pictures. Others cried. A reporter from a local newspaper asked Sena, "What inspired your colors?" Sena tilted her head. "Pain has colors," she said simply. "But so does healing." "And what's next for you?" Sena thought. Maybe more art, maybe science, or maybe hugging people who are sad. The reporter chuckled. "Well, whatever it is, I think you'll change the world." That night, back at the villa, the painting found was hung in their living room. Dead center, unmissable. Josephine lit a candle beneath it. "It deserves a sacred place," she said. Newell stood behind her, arms around her waist. "It already has one," he whispered. "In all of us." Sena crawled between them on the couch, pulling their hands together across her tiny frame. Josephine leaned over and kissed her daughter's temple. "You made your pain into something beautiful," she said. Sena beamed. "I learned from you." The gallery lights dimmed slightly as the afternoon sun lowered beyond the arched windows. But the glow around found only deepened. Guests lingered around Sena's canvas, not rushing, not talking loudly. It wasn't the kind of painting people clapped for and moved past. It was the kind they stared at and whispered about. A couple stood close to Newell. "She's only 6. The woman asked Josephine, stunned. Josephine nodded once, emotion barely contained behind her smile. The man next to her added, "I've seen grown artists try to capture half this much feeling and fail. It's not just technique," the woman murmured. "It's spirit." Newell hadn't moved for nearly 10 minutes. He stood just to the side, arms crossed, eyes locked on the center of the canvas. Those 3 faceless, colored figures beneath a towering olive tree. There was something about that tree. It wasn't just decoration, it meant something. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly. Its roots were tangled in dark charcoal lines, twisting and broken, but above ground, its branches stretched outward, cradling the trio beneath. And then he saw them. Tucked among the olive branches were tiny red hearts, so small they could be missed. He counted them. 3. He turned to Josephine sharply, pointing to the painting. "Did you see?" His voice cracked mid-sentence. Josephine hurried to his side. "What is it?" Newell lifted a shaky hand toward the olive tree. "Look, the hearts." She squinted. When she saw them, her eyes widened. Sena, who had wandered back toward them, grinned quietly. "That's where I put our hearts. In the tree." "Why there?" Newell asked, kneeling to her height. "Because it protects us now," she said softly. "We used to be under something scary, but now, the tree keeps us safe." Newell's jaw clenched. Tears pushed up behind his eyes so fast he couldn't blink them back. His chest hitched. A sob broke free, then another. The crowd quieted. People turned gently, seeing the tall man in a suit, breaking in the most beautiful way. Josephine reached for him, but Newell stepped back once. "I'm okay," he managed. He looked back at the painting. "I've built medical labs across countries. I've stood in front of dying children and didn't blink. But this," he pointed at Sena's canvas, voice thick, "this undid me." He looked at his daughter. "You took all our broken pieces and made them whole again." There was no applause, only silence. Then a woman near the front, a therapist known for her work with trauma survivors, spoke softly. "This is what healing looks like," she said. "Not perfection, but transformation." Later, as the gallery began to clear, Josephine, Newell, and Sena sat on the bench opposite the canvas. It had been moved to its own wall now, at the curator's request. "This piece isn't just art," the woman had said. "It's a legacy." Newell leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I never imagined I'd cry like that," he said. Josephine smiled gently. "You needed to." He looked sideways at her. "You think I've been holding it in?" "I think." She paused. "You've been afraid that if you ever let the grief fall, it wouldn't stop." He exhaled, slow and shaky. "I used to believe strength was silence. Now I know. It's being seen. Across from them, the painting stood quietly. The faceless figures no longer looked anonymous. They looked known. The crimson one, Josephine's silhouette, stood fierce and reaching. The gold and navy one, Newell, strong but softened. And the smallest, the burst of lavender and yellow, Sena, stood radiant between them. The broken pieces at the base of the tree had meaning now, not flaws. History. The olive branches above them whispered of peace, of resilience, and nestled within them, their hearts. Newell placed his arm behind Josephine, curling her close. Sena leaned her head on her mother's lap, shoes kicked off, gallery badge hanging loose around her neck. "I didn't know this would make you cry," she whispered. Newell smiled, eyes still damp. "You didn't make me cry, baby. You made me feel." She closed her eyes. Good. That evening, Florence turned into velvet. The city, usually bustling even at night, quieted for them. At least it felt that way. Newell had asked the gallery owner if they could borrow the rooftop terrace just for a while. No press, no guests, just them. They climbed up together, Newell, Josephine, and Sena, still dressed in the soft glows of the day's triumphs. The evening air carried notes of jasmine and rosemary. From the rooftop, the city lights looked like candle flames on water. A small dinner had been set up under string lights. Not grand, but thoughtful. There was no ring box on the table, no violinist in the corner, only intention. Sena had fallen asleep in a cushioned armchair nearby, her sketch pad, resting on her lap, her curls rising and falling with each tiny breath. Josephine stood near the terrace rail, arms folded across her chest, taking in the night. Newell approached her slowly. "She's dreaming," he whispered. Josephine turned to him. "She deserves the sweetest ones." "So do you." She looked away, but he saw her cheek pull into a quiet smile. Newell stepped closer. "There's something I've rehearsed 1,000 times," he said, voice suddenly unsure. "But tonight, I don't want it to sound like a performance. Just me." She met his eyes, steady. "Then say it," she said. He swallowed. "I walked away from the woman who saved my soul the first time I didn't know how to breathe. I let fear, grief, ego, everything, talk louder than love." Josephine blinked, but said nothing. He continued, "But every time I looked at Sena, I saw you. Every time she smiled through pain, I saw your courage. Every time she reached out to hold me, I saw your grace." A pause. "I never stopped loving you, Josephine. I just stopped believing I deserved to." She looked away for a moment, then back. "And now." He knelt. No box, just bare hands open. "Now I want to spend every morning earning the right to love you again. Not secretly, not from a distance, not in my mind, but out loud." A breath. "I'm asking if you'll marry me. Not because we have a child, but because you are the only person I've ever wanted to build eternity with." The night didn't move. Neither did Josephine. She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. She just stepped forward and knelt beside him. "I forgive you," she whispered. He exhaled. His shoulders dropped. "And I've never stopped loving you either," she added. "But this time, if we do this, it's not just vows and rings." He nodded. "Say what you need. It has to be visible. Our love, for her, for us. No more hiding in boardrooms or blaming timing." Newell nodded. "I want a love that dances in the street if it needs to," she continued. "That kisses at red lights, that forgives out loud, that protects out loud. Love me out loud," she finished. "I already am," he whispered. She smiled, then kissed him. From the chair nearby, a sleepy voice rose. "Did you ask her?" They turned. Sena was stretching, half asleep, blinking at them. Newell stood and walked over. "I did." Josephine followed, kneeling beside their daughter. "And what did she say?" Sena mumbled. Josephine kissed her forehead. "I said yes." Sena yawned. "Good. About time." Later that night, beneath the olive tree in their villa's garden, Josephine slipped her hand into Newell's. There was no official engagement ring yet, no date on a calendar, but there was a promise painted in the stars. They sat in silence for a while. Then Newell whispered, "I want to get you something better than a ring." Josephine raised an eyebrow. What could be better? A home that never breaks again. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then let's build it." Florence rose gently that morning, like a bride being kissed awake. The Ponte Vecchio, that ancient stone bridge crossing the Arno River, stood quietly dressed in peach-colored light. The river below shimmered in ribbons of gold. Shops lining the bridge hadn't opened yet, their shutters still sleeping. But the air buzzed with reverence. Today was no ordinary day. Up in a villa above the city, Josephine stood at the open balcony, barefoot in a silk robe the color of pressed ivory petals. The early light kissed her skin as she breathed in the quiet. Below her, the bells of Santo Spirito rang out softly, 6 slow chimes. She had slept, but only lightly. Not from nerves. From reverence. She wasn't rushing. There were no frantic bridal attendants tugging at gowns or pressing powder to her cheeks. Just silence, the breeze, and the sound of her daughter's light footsteps down the hallway. A small knock. "Come in," she called, already smiling. Sena peeked around the door. "You're up?" Josephine turned to her. "So are you." The little girl padded across the room and climbed onto the edge of the bed. Her hair was still wild from sleep, and her nightgown had one sleeve half fallen. But her eyes were bright. "Do you feel like a bride?" she asked, voice small. Josephine sat beside her. "I feel like a woman who finally arrived where she was always supposed to be." Sena leaned her head against her mother. "Will you cry?" "Maybe. Daddy might." Josephine smiled. "He already has." Elsewhere, just across the Arno, Noel stood in front of a full-length mirror. He wasn't in his tuxedo yet, just an open white shirt and black trousers. His cufflinks lay untouched beside the sink, his hair still damp from a cold morning rinse. But his eyes were full. He stared at himself, not with critique but curiosity, like he was meeting the man he always hoped he'd become. Bruno, his lifelong friend and best man, leaned against the doorway. "You good?" Bruno asked. Newell nodded. "Yeah." Bruno smirked. "No second thoughts?" "Only that I should have done this 10 years ago." Bruno stepped in. "She's not the same woman you married." "I know," Newell said, looking out the window now. "She's stronger." "I know that too." He paused. "But so am I." The ceremony wasn't planned for a cathedral. It wasn't hosted at a palazzo. It was planned on the Ponte Vecchio itself. After months of restoration work, the city had granted them permission to hold the sunrise ceremony there, a tribute to Sena's painting titled Found, which now hung permanently in Florence's new gallery of living artists. There were no chairs lined across the bridge, just scattered petals, no violins, just silence and the natural chorus of morning awakening. The officiant stood near the center, simple and dressed in linen. And as Josephine stepped from the vintage car onto the stone of the bridge, time seemed to halt. Her dress wasn't extravagant, no veil, no train, just a sleek, off-shoulder gown that whispered against the stone as she walked. Sena held a bouquet made of olive branches and lavender. She walked a few steps ahead, pausing just before the altar. When Josephine reached the center, Newell was already there, still waiting. No one clapped, no one cheered. Just eyes, and breaths being held. Newell reached out, taking her hand. "You found me," he whispered. Josephine smiled. "You came looking." Their daughter stepped forward, placing a hand in each of theirs. "Don't mess this up," she warned. Laughter rippled softly across the few gathered guests. Newell grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Josephine leaned down and kissed Sena's head. "Thank you for walking us back to each other." Sena nodded solemnly. "Now kiss already." The officiant smiled. "Not yet," he said. "Let's make this official first." But as they stood beneath the dawning light, surrounded by the history of Florence, it already felt like the world had acknowledged their vows long before words were spoken. They were no longer unfinished stories. They were a masterpiece named Found. The wind shifted slightly across the Ponte Vecchio, stirring petals and olive leaves like whispered blessings. The stone beneath them, centuries old, carried the weight of history. But today, it also carried the heartbeat of something brand new. Josephine's hand was in Newell's, but between them, Sena gripped tightly, grounding both of them. The officiant smiled, stepping aside to give them space. They weren't being given away. They were walking forward, together. Sena looked up at them. "You both walk me to school, so now I walk you here." Newell's breath hitched. Josephine blinked rapidly, refusing to cry just yet. The bridge had been dressed in simplicity. No pews, no arches, no fanfare. Only scattered olive leaves across the stone, carefully placed by Sena earlier that morning. They stepped onto that path now, her little fingers wrapped around theirs. Each footstep was deliberate, sacred. Josephine whispered, "What are you thinking?" Newell exhaled, "That this is the vow." She tilted her head slightly. "Every time I walk beside you, every step we take, that's the promise, not just the words we say after." Josephine smiled at him. "Then let's keep walking." The gathered guests, small, intimate, stood on either side of the Isle of Leaves. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Even the air dared not interrupt. At one point, Sena paused. "Look," she pointed up. An olive branch curled by the wind hovered in the air between them, suspended mid-air like grace had taken form. Josephine caught it before it hit the ground. "Keep it," Sena whispered. "I will." As they reached the center of the bridge again, where the officiant stood waiting, Sena stopped them with a raised hand. "Before you talk," she said, "I want to say something." Josephine looked at Newell. He nodded. Sena stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. "I used to think families were just people who lived in the same house. But now I know it's who holds you when you're scared, who listens, who sees you." She turned to them. "You're my family because you chose me, but also because you chose each other. And today I choose both of you." She reached up and placed their hands together, then stepped back. The officiant cleared his throat. Hard act to follow. Laughter bubbled through the crowd. He lifted his hands. "Marriage is not a performance. It's not perfection. It's not possession. It is presence." He turned to Newell. "Do you have your vow?" Newell nodded. "I don't need paper." He faced Josephine, both hands now holding hers. "I loved you before I knew what love required. I failed you before I knew how to stay. But every step I take now, every one that led me back to you, was worth crawling if it meant standing here today." She swallowed, eyes shimmering. "I vow to be near, even when I don't know what to say, to pause, not pull away, to fight with you, not against you, and to always, always remember that you are not just my wife, but the home I never deserved until now." The silence stretched like soft fabric between them. Then the officiant turned. "Josephine?" She nodded slowly. "I've waited years to hear that," she said, barely above a whisper. "Then I used to measure love by pain, by what I endured, what I held together. But I know now that real love doesn't require breaking." She reached up, brushing her fingers against his jaw. "You are not the man I married years ago. You're better. Because you walked through fire and came back not with pride, but with open hands." Her voice cracked. "I vow to choose you, not because I need you, but because I want you, every day, with no rescue needed." Sena sniffled loudly. Josephine turned, eyebrows raised. "I'm allowed," the girl said. Laughter filled the bridge. Then, stillness. The officiant glanced at them both. "You have spoken your truth. You have walked together. You have chosen each other again." Then, by the power of this moment, in the eyes of those who believe in second chances, he smiled. "You may seal it." Their kiss wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet, gentle, deep. A kiss that didn't need to prove anything. A kiss that knew. And as their lips met, Sena stepped forward and placed both hands on their backs, hugging them together. "I told you," she whispered. Masterpiece. The wind picked up as if Florence itself had exhaled. On the Ponte Vecchio, the city continued to buzz at a distance, bells ringing, voices echoing from cafes, but here, inside the hush between two hearts, time slowed. Newell was still holding her hand. Josephine hadn't looked away once since the kiss. But now, both of them stood still, eyes locked, as if remembering everything it took to reach this bridge. The officiant had stepped back. No more words were required from him. This was theirs now. Newell took her hand and pressed it against his chest. "Feel that?" he said, voice steady. She nodded. "It's not nerves," he added. "It's gratitude." Josephine leaned forward slightly, her forehead resting against his. "And mine is grief." Finally letting go, they turned slightly, facing their intimate group of witnesses, family, friends, colleagues, from medical conferences, and even the nurse who first introduced Newell to Sena's case. But instead of addressing the crowd, they faced each other again. No microphone, no podium, only raw, human truth. Newell cleared his throat. "Josephine, he began. "I used to think love was something I needed to prove." He paused. "But now I know love isn't about performance. It's about presence. It's showing up even when there's no solution. It's saying I'm here, not because I have the answers, but because I'm not going anywhere." Her breath caught. "In the storm," he continued, "I turned away. I hid in my own shame, my fears. I didn't believe I could be a father, a husband, a man you'd be proud of." He looked her full in the face now. "But today, I vow this, I will never again use silence as a shield. I will speak. I will stay. I will try, even when trying scares me, because you, Josephine, you are the lesson that saved me." The tears on her cheeks didn't fall. They rested there, like they too were listening. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "Newell, I believed love meant staying even when it hurt. I believed my worth was tied to endurance." She shook her head softly. "But I see now. Real love doesn't demand silence. It invites voice. Real love doesn't fear the cracks. It pours into them." Newell blinked rapidly. She reached for his face, hands cradling him. "I don't need you to be perfect. I only need you to be honest. Because the man I see now, he's not who I married. He's better, because he chose to come back. Not for redemption, but for love. For us, for her." She smiled through her tears. "And I vow this. I will no longer protect you from your past. I will walk into it with you, and together we'll build a future that remembers, but never returns to, what we once feared." The gallery around them was still. Even Sena didn't fidget. Every soul on that bridge held their breath. Then Newell reached forward. His hands shook as they found hers. And he whispered, not for performance, not for theatrics, but because truth sometimes only survives when it's spoken quietly. "I love you. Not for who you were, but for who you let me become beside you." She nodded once. "Then kiss me like you mean it." And he did. It wasn't the kind of kiss that made noise. It wasn't the kind that lingered for attention. It was lips meeting lips with the weight of everything that had passed between them. It was fire without the burn, salt water without the sting, a lifetime rewritten in seconds. Sena ran forward, wrapping her arms around both their legs, chin tipped up with a wide grin. "Now can we eat cake?" Laughter exploded through the small gathering. Someone popped champagne. Someone else snapped a photo. But Josephine and Newell didn't look away from each other, not yet. Because in that moment, chaos swirling, voices rising, joy blooming, they finally found what they'd been chasing for years. Not perfection, not escape, not applause, but presence. Mornings in their new home didn't begin with alarms anymore. They began with Sena's voice drifting down the hallway, singing her version of "Good Morning, Florence" as she brushed her hair in front of the bathroom mirror. Every word out of tune, every note too loud, and yet it was the most beautiful sound Josephine had ever heard. She stirred her coffee and smiled as the little girl skipped barefoot across the kitchen tiles. "Want one sugar or two today, Dr. Daddy?" Sena asked, holding the sugar bowl like it was a sacred offering. Newell looked up from his newspaper, lowered his glasses, and grinned. "Two. But only because today's a big day." The big day wasn't about ribbon cuttings or press photos. It was something quieter, more personal. The children's clinic on Via de' Bardi, nestled between a used bookshop and a flower market, opened its doors with no speeches. Just a small hand-painted sign, Casa della Speranza, House of Hope. Inside, the walls were painted in soft golds and blues. No clinical white, no smell of bleach. There were reading corners and beanbags and drawings Sena insisted on hanging in every room. Even the stethoscopes were rainbow-colored. Newell stood near the entrance, adjusting the nameplate on the door, Dr. Newell Sebastian, Pediatric Medicine and Rare Diagnostics. Josephine came up behind him, sliding her arms around his waist. "You finally brought healing home," she whispered. He leaned into her. "No, we did." Meanwhile, Sena had been painting again. She set up her easel in the courtyard behind the clinic, beneath a row of terracotta pots filled with herbs and tiny sunflowers. Her brush dipped into yellows and greens, her tiny tongue poking from her lips in concentration. A passing nurse peeked over her shoulder. "What's that you're making, sweetheart?" Sena beamed. "It's called Better. It's what we are now." At home that evening, they didn't talk about test results. They danced. Not a formal waltz or practiced steps. Just soft music playing from Josephine's phone, Sena twirling between them in her polka dot pajamas, Newell catching her mid-spin and lifting her high into the air. The laughter didn't echo. It settled in the walls. It embedded itself in the wood, the curtains, the cushions. Later that night, Newell stood at the bedroom balcony, looking out over Florence. The Duomo dome glowed beneath the moonlight. The river reflected stars. Josephine joined him, barefoot, robe wrapped tight. "She's really better, isn't she?" he asked, voice quiet, reverent. She nodded. "We still have appointments. But yes, the worst is behind us." He exhaled, pressing his forehead to hers. "I never thought I'd say this," he whispered, "but I needed this journey to understand how to live." Josephine brushed her lips across his cheek. "And I needed it to believe I was allowed to be loved fully." In the mornings, Sena started taking care of the plants outside the clinic. "Lavender for calm," she'd say, "mint for thinking, and olive leaves for truth." One afternoon, Josephine watched her from inside the consultation room. The girl's face caught sunlight like it had learned how to forgive the world and shine anyway. And in a notebook on his desk, Newell began sketching new plans. Satellite clinics, training programs for remote pediatric diagnostics, a new fellowship program for young doctors. But at the top of the page, underlined 3 times, was a single phrase: healing should never be a privilege. One night, as they lay on the floor of their living room after a movie night, pillows, scattered popcorn crumbs between them. Sena lay between them, half asleep. Newell whispered, "How did we get so lucky?" Josephine responded with her fingers laced in his. "Because we kept showing up. Not every day was perfect. There were still tantrums. There were still worries. Sena still had her weak days. But in the house they built, not of stone or glass, but of healing, laughter, and second chances, perfection was never the goal. It was presence, and presence was everything. The smell of acrylic paint had long replaced the scent of medicine in their home. Josephine had surrendered the corner room to Sena without a fight. Once used for linen and forgotten boxes, the space now glowed with skylight easels and vivid mess. Today, there was silence. Sena, now 10, sat cross-legged in front of a massive blank canvas, bigger than any she had dared to face before. Her curls were pinned back with her favorite clip, the one shaped like a crescent moon, and her fingertips were already stained with blue. Josephine peeked in. "Want company?" Sena didn't look up. "Maybe later, Mama. This one needs to come from my heart." That evening, she didn't come down for dinner. Newell walked upstairs with a plate of warm pasta, only to find her asleep on the floor, brushes scattered, the canvas half finished. He didn't wake her. Instead, he pulled a blanket over her, sat beside the drying paint, and stared. At first glance, it looked simple, 3 figures standing beneath the sky. But it wasn't simple. There were no faces, just 3 hearts drawn in different hues. One golden, one soft pink, one a bold, shimmering red. And above them, an enormous shared sky swirling with constellations, olive branches, musical, notes, and what appeared to be tiny sketches of medical symbols and art supplies. She hadn't painted them. She had painted what held them together. The next morning, Josephine found her in front of the canvas again, brushing tiny details into the corners. "She's still working?" Josephine whispered to Newell, handing him coffee. "She said it's not finished until it feels like a prayer," he replied. By midday, Sena called them in. They stepped into the room like entering a chapel. She stood proudly, arms behind her back, beaming like the sun had moved into her chest. "This," she declared, "is my final painting. It's called 3 Hearts, 1 Sky." They didn't speak at first. Josephine stepped closer, her fingers hovering near the canvas but not touching. The pink heart had tiny strokes within it, scars really, softly lined over with gold leaf, like they were meant to shine through, not disappear. The red heart was fierce and wild, surrounded by vines and flames but still standing tall. And the golden heart? That one pulsed with music notes and doctor's tools, held by an olive branch in a circle. Josephine felt tears rise, but she kept them still. Sena's voice was clear. "This is us. Not how we look, but how we love." Newell knelt beside her. "Why the sky, sweetheart?" Sena bit her lip, thoughtful. "Because love doesn't stay in just one place. It lives everywhere around us. And the sky is big enough to hold everything we've been through." Then she paused. "And because the sky is where I prayed, every night, when I thought maybe you'd leave." Newell's throat closed. He reached for her, pulling her into a deep hug. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. "Not now. Not ever." That weekend, the final painting was hung in the children's clinic, right in the waiting area, not on a small wall, center stage, where every parent, every child, every doctor could see it. No plaque, no artist name, just 3 words written gently beneath it in Sena's own handwriting: "Love heals everything." Later that night, under a quilt of quiet stars, the family sat on the rooftop terrace. Sena held a flashlight like a microphone. "Tonight's show," she declared, "is about brave mamas, kind daddies, and daughters who learn to speak to the stars." They laughed. Newell looked over at Josephine. "I used to think medicine was the greatest gift I could give." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "And now, I realize the greatest gift was learning how to be loved by you and her." Sena fell asleep on a lounge chair, blanket over her knees, flashlight still in hand. And in that silence, wrapped in cool air, warm hearts, and the final brushstroke of a child who survived, the world felt perfectly painted. Not flawless, not easy, but entirely theirs. The camera pans slowly across the quiet olive groves of Tuscany. Birdsong, gentle wind, sunlight resting softly on the earth. Inside a sunlit room of their hillside villa, Josephine sits by an open window, notebook in her lap, her fingers slowly brushing across the worn edges of a page. She's not writing, not anymore. She's remembering. Her voice begins, soft and steady. A voice not just of survival, but of truth. Josephine, voiceover. "There was a time I thought my story ended the day I walked out of that hospital, carrying a child and a broken heart. But stories don't end with heartbreak. They begin with it. Sena was born from love, but also from grief, and somehow she became the healing we never saw coming." Cut to Sena, laughing as she paints Newell's cheek with a streak of color while he chases her through their vineyard garden. Then, back to Josephine's voice. "There were nights I held her hand through IV lines, and I prayed, not just for her healing, but for mine. I wanted answers, apologies, miracles. But healing doesn't always come the way we expect. Sometimes it comes in the form of olive leaves, whispered vows, and the arms of the man who once left, but never really stopped loving." She smiles faintly, flipping to a blank page. On her finger, a gold band, newly added. On the shelf beside her, a framed copy of Sena's final painting, 3 hearts, 1 sky. People say time heals everything, but that's only half the truth. Time gives you the chance to heal, but love is what finishes the job. Flash to Newell bouncing a newborn baby boy in his arms. Josephine resting on the couch, radiant and whole. Sena standing proudly beside the crib, holding a sketch pad labeled Big Sister Chronicles, Volume 1. We didn't plan this. Not the pain, not the journey, not even the reunion. But we chose it. Every single day, we wake up and choose each other, not because it's easy, but because it's real. Josephine closes the notebook. She walks outside barefoot, across the stone path toward her family. The camera lifts slowly into the sky, over olive trees, laughter, soft echoes of joy, until it catches the horizon stretching wide and blue. Her voice is the last thing we hear. To anyone watching this, feeling alone, aching, or forgotten, please remember, healing is real. Love is still possible. And family isn't just what you're born into. It's what you fight to keep. If this story moved you, type "healed" in the comments. Let someone who's hurting today know that healing is possible, even against all odds. Thank you for being part of this journey. Comment where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this story touched your heart. And always remember, love heals.